Welcome into the MPW Digital Postgame Show. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me because I had some technical issues pop up. Can you guys hear me okay? Jeffrey? Chase?
I can hear you 100%.
Okay, good deal, good deal. Apparently I've got at least most of them quasi-fixed. Ole Miss loses at Florida 24-17. I'm Neal McCready. Jeffrey Wright joins. So does Chase Parham from Philadelphia, where he's getting ready for his marathon tomorrow. We'll talk all about the game. First one, tell you we've been brought to you all season of the postgame by Realtree Camo. Proud to support Ole Miss football and all Rebel athletics. Fall's a special time of year, not just for football fans, but also for those who love the outdoors, whether you're cheering from the stands or gearing up for hunting season. It's all about tradition, family, friends, and unforgettable moments. Realtree brings that same passion to delivering best-in-class camo products, including their new all-purpose hunting pattern, Realtree APX, and Realtree Legacy, plus some of their popular old-school patterns. Check out Realtree.com for all your camo apparel needs. Enter the code MPW15 for 15% off your order. Guys, I don't even know where to start. Obviously, Ole Miss loses 24-17. They drop to 8-3 overall. 4-3 in the SEC. The big story, obviously, is this is the end of their college football playoff hopes. I think ABC said 4% with a loss. I'd take the under.
That's high.
Yeah, I'd take the under.
And also Bob was choosing during the game. Even said he's like, I really think it's like 100% if they win, it's 0% if they lose.
I agree with him completely.
Yeah, I told Jeffrey right before we started, as we kind of get this thing going, that I think they played their worst game of the year. I think when you look at it, they from an execution relative to talent, relative to moment, to everything, including coming off the bye week and knowing that this was the game that if you're going to lose one of the next two, it was their worst performance because they were bad everywhere. Coaching was not very good today. Dart played pretty well until there at the end with two interceptions on his final two drives, including really three when you think about it. The Micah Davis run game experience was an abject failure. J.J. Pegues going outside instead of inside. We get into that, but failed red zone attempts with the run game, however you want to categorize that. Juice Wells and Jordan Watkins had maybe their worst games of the season. Watkins for sure had several should-have-been catches relative to what he normally does, or drops. Juice Wells kind of has done what he's done in the entire season, which is just not make plays. And that's really the only way to mention it and say it at this point. You get an effort where I think Jeffrey had this stat. You tie Florida 3-3 in a quarter where Florida had -9 total yards in a quarter, and you tie the quarter. They get beat on special teams. They muff the punt with Davis. They miss a field goal. They don't kick field goals in the red zone. Florida goes 2 for 2 in the red zone. Ole Miss goes 0 for 3. All the way you look at it, they simply played in the one script to have the result that was coming, and it's because they played a really, really, really bad football game today against a team that could take advantage of it.
Yeah, I guess the way that I look at it, I know Neal likes to say this, and I totally agree with him. When you get into playoff football, and I know this is not the playoffs, but they've been in, for all intents and purposes, they've been in a playoff because they can't afford to lose. Eventually your red flags get exposed. And when we talked about this team, throughout the course of the year doing these post-game shows, we consistently, even when they were rolling, we were like, okay, what are the issues? Well, we weren't really convinced that they could run the football consistently. We weren't convinced that they were going to be a good red zone offense. And, they had a tendency to have really dumb penalties and painful penalties. I kind of felt like everything came in the mix today, like almost every one of their issues. And then, I really did think the way that the defense came out at the half, I thought, okay, they look different. They look ready. I thought it was going to kind of be like the Oklahoma half, and then they dropped the punt. And all of a sudden, I felt like there were so many opportunities to knock out Florida, and they never could. And you let them keep hanging around, and eventually you just didn't come up with enough plays. And on offense, they had so many drops. They just, to me, it's like all of the things and the ingredients that they needed to lose this game, they contributed to heavily.
I mean, it's every one of those things. It's the Achilles. It's what they've done. It's everything there. It's some added things. I mean, look, I think Sammy said in the stream a second ago, they dropped 6 passes today. I don't know if they have 6 drops the entire season when you come to that.
And by the way, these aren't like sometimes like these were easy I mean, these were bread basket catches.
I mean, Juice Wells a big drop. I won't criticize Watkins. He's had a hell of a season. Without him, the whole Trey Harris absence is just unovercomable. Daquan Wright had a big drop. Look, the lack of a running game is bad. And then, listen, I think today we have to talk about this. It's been fun and cute, and it worked, and I'll give credit for that. But there were some moments today where you just take the damn field goal. You just get the points. You know if you're going to win, you're going to win with defense. You're not winning with an electric offense. You don't have a running game. So take the points. Keep adding the points. They left points on the field. I know he missed a field goal, but they could have taken another. It would have been tough to take 28-yard kicks. I get it. But you know what? They did it against Georgia. And today, and Jeffrey said this in a text to me, it was all about survive and advance. I had 2 columns going. One was the one that's up now, and one was about surviving and advancing. Because you weren't going to dominate Florida. Style points were out the window, and they didn't matter anyway. You just had to go win the game, and they didn't. And they kept letting Florida stay tied. Maybe kick a field goal and make Florida be behind 3 points. See if that affects them at all. Tons of credit to Billy Napier. Back-to-back weeks where he had his team really ready to play. They beat LSU. They beat Ole Miss. The young quarterback is poised. He's composed. He's playing not 100%, but he makes plays. They did a lot of really good things. Then defensively, they just kind of gained a little confidence as the game went on. Ole Miss's offensive front, when McIntyre went out, got kind of discombobulated in the middle. Who would have thought Reese McIntyre would be a critical cog going into this season? But here we are. Who would have thought that Juice Wells, after all of the hype, would be the abject disaster that he's been for this team all season? Who would have thought going into this game 11, that Micah Davis is your primary running back? Bentley didn't play at all after they fed Bentley to us on Tuesday or Monday at one of the media things. They played games all year with being cute, and today it kind of burned them. It really did. It burned them today. And, they played Trey Harris. He had a touchdown catch, but then he gets hurt on a catch where he comes down on one leg, and it tells you right away that he came back nowhere close to healthy. There's a lot of things to question today, frankly. And
by the way, they were lucky that, I guess it ends up being a turnover.
Yeah,
because they missed the field goal.
But could have easily been a fumble.
That could have easily been catch, fumble, and it was off to the races.
It was a fumble. Yeah.
Ole Miss today in the run game. Had they told us this in August, we would have thought devastating injuries to every damn body. Jackson Dart, 14 carries, 71 yards. Micah Davis, 11 carries, 27 yards. Dominique Thomas, 3 carries, 20 yards. JJ Pegee, 6 carries, 19 yards. And Matt Jones, 1 carry, 4 yards. That was the run game today. Does it?
Yeah. Also, to Neal's point, I was looking this up. Okay, I think they were regurgitating the stat. I think it was something like Pegues was like 13 for 13 on power rushing opportunities. I'm cool if you want to go for it once, but once it was very obvious, hey man, you weren't exactly like dominating at the line of scrimmage. That's when I was like, you know what? Just take some points, man. Like I think we've jumped the shark on the analytics.
Because you did it last week. You told yourself you were a defensive football team. Take points, play defense, play field position, trust it. And it worked. And we sat here on this postgame show and gave him all the accolades for doing that and for being that kind of coach and recognizing score, situation, and circumstance. And he went completely against it. He did the thing where, and I think you'll get what I'm saying here. It looked like he was playing Alabama, where he was so impatient to keep going for it, and that he wasn't okay coming off the field, and he almost was kind of throwing the coach version of a frustrated temper tantrum to know I just have to go for it on 4th down, instead of looking at him and going, Florida's probably not going to drive all day. Just kick some field goals, get ahead, play it. Lagway's going to throw one to you eventually, and you got one on the tip. And also, you were getting home the entire game. Lagway made a couple hellaciously good plays to get out of trouble, to avoid sacks. But even in the first half, you got to him. You were starting to wrap him, and then you thought, okay, that's going to turn around. He's not always going to get away from Walter Nolan every single time. Lane Kiffin or Charlie Weiss and whoever you want to put all, but it's Kiffin. It's his team. They did not play situational football whatsoever, and that's what bit them today. I think if you just kick the field goals and play, and then, I mean, obviously Micah Davis catching a punt, because, I mean, when you look back, I do think that punt is the play of the season.
Yeah, and, I mean, to me, it's almost like oftentimes football can be distilled down to what did you do on critical downs?
Mm-hmm.
Man, what did Ole Miss do today on critical downs? They were horrible on third down. They were horrible on fourth down. You know, I do think the defense – I thought the defense was pretty game. Like, you know, I thought the defense played well enough to win.
Yeah.
But offensively, man, they did not execute at a level to win. And then the other thing I would say about also taking some points, man, when you got like 200 yards and you got 0 points, like that does kind of psychologically start to weigh on you. Like, you know, then you start pressing even more and more and more. It's almost like, man, just get something up on the board.
Ole Miss, 464 yards of offense, 120 more than Florida. Ole Miss threw it for 323, ran it for 141. Florida passed for 180, ran for 164. It's a big number for the Gators. That would have made Billy pretty excited if you told him before the day, hey, you're going to run for 164 on Ole Miss. But here to me is the big number for Ole Miss. Florida 7 for 15 on third down. Ole Miss 3 for 14.
If you dig deeper, Ole Miss had half as many on average to go than Florida and still went half as many times getting it. Ole Miss only averaged 4 yards per third down. Florida averaged 9 per third down.
Yeah. And then on top of that, they were 2 of 4 on fourth down. So, like, they were 5 of 19 on conversion plays?
Yes.
Like, that's just not going to get it done.
Yeah, time of possession separated by 6 seconds. Ole Miss had it 30 minutes and 3 seconds compared to 29:57 for the Gators. Jackson Dart, by the way, 24 for 41, 323, 2 and 2. The two interceptions coming in the final minutes.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I don't know what to put at Jackson's feet, because like I felt like he played well enough to win this game, but then like you can't deny the obvious. Like he made, I mean, that last possession's kind of whatever. Like it did feel like he was. I can't believe that game ended in a pick when he's crying on the bench, you know, and they have to go back in and play. But at the same time, it's like, man, you cannot throw that pick that he threw the previous possession. Like it was 1st and 10, and where were they? Like the 33.
Yeah, they were like at the 40-yard line. They were
like, and they had all timeouts. Like the time was not going to be of the essence, and they were moving the ball because they had been patient. Like they were taking like those 6-yard hitches, and they were just being very patient and methodical. And like that was just the classic, like, man, like I want to get a touchdown here.
Yeah,
so,
I got to take a shot. It's like, no, man, just keep moving the football. Take 5, 6, 7 yards of play. You know, you need one score. You need a touchdown to force overtime. That's where your mindset should have been, instead of I got to get a shot. And that's just kind of, look, it's the thing that makes him great, but it's also the thing that I think cost him sometimes. And today was the day that, it's kind of like the LSU game a little bit. As that game got shorter and shorter and shorter, the crowd gets into it. You get a little tight. This team did not handle pressure well. A year ago, this team played a bunch of close games and won them all. This year, they've played 3 close games and they're 0-3.
Well, and I also think there's kind of a key difference, because I mean, we all know how I feel like. It's like when you have a year where you have a bunch of close one-score wins, that usually levels out. But I think the key difference for me is last year it felt like the script for most of those one-score games was they built a big lead and then someone would try and come back. But they had enough of a lead they can hold it. Whereas this year in the one-score games, it feels like for the most part they're even. It's not like they're hanging on. Like it's not like they put up a bunch of points and they're holding on. They're kind of in dogfights. And I think kind of what we've seen is, I was also wondering this as well. I felt like they had finally adjusted to playing without Trey Harris on offense. But I almost wonder, like, when you work the whole week and you're expecting Trey to play, like, does that impact how they look on offense? Because to me, it's almost like when Trey is out there, it becomes like either hit the one-on-one to Trey or just kind of like run the ball. And it doesn't feel like that they have the full like accoutrement, if you will, of offense when they prepare to play with Trey.
Got a lot of
even a couple times today, he locked on him and it just worked. It still didn't look the same.
Honestly,
well, outside of Daquan Wright, I thought they really used Wright well in the first half.
I mean, honestly, the touchdown was kind of like Trey Harris being a stud. But I mean, I don't know. Like, that's where I really do struggle of like how much do you put it on the quarterback? And because I feel like of all the problems today, like he ends up getting the one, he ends up putting the nail in the coffin. But man, he would have been way down the list for me of reasons why I think they lost this game.
Handful of super chats I want to touch on because I appreciate them very much. Whisker Reb, thank you, sir. He says, I assume it's a sir, might be a female. He says, he or she says, I've had the worst day of my life before this game capped it off. All of that said, thank you for doing this, Chase. Thank you, Neal. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Brian. We'll always listen to y'all regardless. Appreciate that very much. Hope your day gets better. Austin, thank you for the super chat. He says, don't lose to Kentucky or LSU in overtime. I'm absolutely devastated. Florida was better and has a bright future. Typical WAOM moment. Love you guys. Thank you to Sammy. He says, thanks a lot, Neal. Reb's now 0-1 in big games when you mention Hugh and Soft in the Mouth in the same ad read this past week. 6 effing drops. Yeah, I will accept the blame, Sammy. Clutch Cam says, first year that Kiffin doesn't have an NFL back, let Judkins walk. I understand he was a locker room issue and relying entirely too much on Trey Harris. And then I'm going to this one as kind of a segue to maybe one of the next questions here, if I can find it. It's there it is. Jim Brian Logan, thanks for the super chat. He says, how many guys opt out of the Egg Bowl? I'll take the first stab at that. I don't know that anybody opts out of the Egg Bowl. How many people opt out of the next bowl? I'm going to go with more than 0. Lane's been pretty good about applying pressure to guys when they tried to opt out. Ask me how I know. And he got him to stay. He with one particular player, he threatened what he would say in NFL circles if he opted out. I don't know that that's going to work with a bunch of guys. If a bunch of guys say, "Hey, I don't need to go play."
Yeah, he only had one opt out last year. Cedric Johnson was the only one for the Peach Bowl. I mean, I would set the over under at 5.
I mean, the other thing you got to remember is they're going to go to a worse bowl game this year.
Oh yeah, true. I mean, there's no doubt.
We'll go to
that Peach Bowl was a celebration and a launch point. This is just a failure. That's it. It's just a failure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of opt-outs next week because I would presume they'd still like to get the November check or the NIL. Yeah. But I mean, it does. I mean, I think it brings into play like what the hell do they even look like on Friday?
Oh, it's nondescript. I mean, there's no juice at all in the building. I mean, Mississippi State, I don't know what time they played later today against Missouri. I guess it's right about now, isn't it?
I think they played at 3:15. I think they just kicked off.
Yeah. So you've got that game. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the worst. That is the nature of today's college football. When you are 1 week in the playoff race and then the next week you're not in the playoff race, it goes from being everything to nothing. And that's just the way it is.
I think to your point, part of why everyone feels bad is, you were the first game of the day, so it's 11 a.m. But right now I'm looking at Colorado down 10-0 to Kansas. Penn State is down 7-0 to Minnesota. And I think it's early, but I think like what we're seeing the theme develop, those teams that are kind of in that 5-13 mix, like Tennessee didn't look good. Now granted it's UTEP and like their whole season comes down to next week. But what we're starting to see right now is like teams that are in that 5-14 mix, man, the pressure has looked like it's impacted them to me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, hey, it's real. When you're playing playoff games against teams that aren't in the playoff mix and they don't have as much to lose, they play a little looser. And if you don't put them away early, you get tight. They don't get tight because they don't have anything to lose. Florida had nothing to lose today. Nothing. I'm not taking anything away from them. I thought they were very prepared. I think we can put the Sunbelt Billy shit to bed now. I mean, put that away. They were very prepared, and they were very steady, and they looked like a very composed team 2 weeks in a row. But it felt like at 14-7 when Ole Miss scored to tie it, got it back on the turnover, but I think Saunders had the interception, and then they went back down and scored immediately. I want to say it was to I don't know.
Was it Caden Lee?
Juice Wells, somebody.
So the second touchdown, you're talking to put them up 14-7, correct?
Yeah,
14,
the play across the middle.
Yeah, it was Caden Lee. It was the little
Caden
seam
Lee.
route or whatever, like the kind of like skinny post.
I thought right there, they're fine. They're going to go get this done now. 14-7, and they're the better team. And then, they gave up a drive, and Florida got back in it, and Ole Miss kind of couldn't do anything at the final few minutes of the first half. And, and then it was 17-17, basically, with 50 seconds to go in the third quarter. And when you make something a one-quarter game, it's a one-quarter game. All the other stuff doesn't really matter anymore. And Ole Miss was unable to – Ole Miss went scoreless, and they lost the fourth quarter 7-0.
Yeah, we oftentimes talk about how teams take on the personality of the coach. Today felt like you seeing kind of the worst of Lane's personality come out in his team. Like they were very impatient. It was kind of reckless, honestly, at times. Like I just thought I thought today was a very immature performance by Ole Miss.
It's immature. It's tight. It's whatever word you want to put on it. Like I said, they felt rushed. It was like they didn't handle the stakes. And it's what's funny about because you're right, Neal. Florida came out the last 2 weeks, played really aggressive, good football. Yeah. It shows you that. I mean, obviously, wins or losses early in the season can change this, but teams playing or what their relative expectation is in the pecking order matters to how much they're putting into the season as it goes. Florida was never expected to be a playoff team. So when they start winning a little later, they're just kind of juiced up for next year, or playing for themselves or doing whatever. There's none of that stuff, even from the standpoint of it just being perceived going into the year. Hey, they got a really tough schedule. The expectation 7 wins, 8 wins, 6 wins, 5 wins, whatever the hell it is. We're seeing this a lot, is that it's almost like it starts building even like week 5, and you can see which teams are just kind of staying together because they read, they understand, they know where they are, even seeing kind of where you are versus, Ole Miss that had handled this so well for several weeks. South Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia, obviously. That was only 2 weeks ago that all that stuff happened. And then today, just a completely different team, completely differently composed team. Coaching was way different. I mean, it was everything involved with this. And Jeffrey's right. They played impatient, and they didn't handle any aspect of this. And, you can point to 2 or 3 different things. It's just sort of playing a team that has less talent, getting a turnover, and then having your quarterback play a pretty good game until those final 2 series and being behind. Like, it just takes a really special recipe of failure to get to that point. And that's what they showed today.
And they allowed themselves to get there. You know what I mean? Like, to be in that situation honestly, like, I've always made the joke, but it's like Lane Kiffin today coached like he was playing a video game. And if he was going to lose, he was just going to turn it off and restart it. But, like, that's, I felt like, and there's obviously some a physical and player element too, because like clearly when they had to reshuffle the offensive line, there were issues there because remember when they tried to run that option play on third down?
Colepo took the wrong step, and the guy came in and hammered Dart in the backfield.
I know it wasn't a perfect snap, but like Dart like spun. Like I almost wondered if like half the people were going one way and the play went the other. Like, because Colepo like blocked like he was going to the right and the play was going to the left. And so like, and the way that Dart caught the snap and spun, Like, but I mean, to me, like that's kind of all the same thing. It's like, man, how are you not on the same page this late in the season? Like, especially on it was another third down. I mean, it was like 3rd and 2, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably. I mean, Neal talks about how it's going to resonate inside the program or fan base or kind of wherever else. And I put this at the end of observations. I think for Ole Miss, what is going to be such a struggle is a entity. I mean, not the players necessarily, but just an entity to figure out what comes next. Is that their plan was good. They were good enough. They didn't execute well enough. There's a completely difference there. You can be good enough to do something and screw it up yourselves because you didn't execute and you didn't take care of the moment. So when you talk about putting the roster together or the plan or this is how you do it, because you're going to see a lot of stuff over the next week of, oh, we'll see, it just didn't work. And, okay, there's no guarantee you're making the playoff, but putting a roster together like this is the only way it might work. I can sure as hell not going to work the other way if you don't do that. But you still have to play the games. You got to have the right personalities. You got to execute. You got to make the right decisions. And in every one of those other categories, they failed today. They didn't make the right decisions. They didn't have the right personality. They didn't play well. And they made mistakes because Florida did nothing special today. That's what's so interesting watching this game is, there's games where we go, hey, like LSU, Nussmeier makes these 2 huge throws and converts these 4th downs, and you go, wow, hey, LSU gets to play too. At no point today did I look at Florida and go, hey, they're just having the game of their lives. They just stayed on the field and let Ole Miss beat itself.
Yeah, they didn't do anything special. And the challenge for Ole Miss now as an entity, as you, I think, accurately portray it, is that today is November the 23rd. The portal opens in, I'm trying to do some quick math here.
17 days, give or take. 16
I was going to say about 2-ish weeks. And so
it's December 9th.
Okay, December 9th. So you've got, you guys are better at math than I am. 16, 17 days. So you've got little over 2 weeks before the portal opens again, and you've got to figure out, okay, we had $16 million invested in this roster. We've got high school recruiting coming up right now, which is basically done. They're waiting on like 4 or 5 guys that it will basically come down to a financial decision. But that all factors into what I'm saying. You have you have to decide on a high school player if the difference is $50,000 on a bid. Do you go ahead and make that bid, or do you save that money and put it into the portal? How much more money do you need? Do you need the same amount of money in the portal this time? Do you need more? If you need more, what lessons did you learn from this one? Because they weren't perfect in the portal. And if you go, it's kind of like free agency in baseball or something, or in the NFL. If you go out and add a bunch of guys via free agency, there will be busts. There will be guys that pay off, and there will be guys that bust. And that happened for Ole Miss this year. I mean, Key Lawrence never played. I think it's fair to call Juice Wells a bust at this point. I do. Daquan Wright was a big hit. Walter Nolan was a big hit. Princely Imanmielen was a big hit. Pooh Paul was a monstrous hit. Yam Banks was really playing well before he got hurt today. But they've had some guys that didn't pan out. Obviously, Amos, the running back, didn't pan out at all. Trey Amos, the defensive back, panned out in a big way. So, how many guys do you go get? How do you do that? And can you muster up the energy and the excitement? Because last year, guys, they were recruiting into excitement. Hey, look what we just did. Look what we're about to go do. This year, they're recruiting into something different now. And so that's a challenge. It's harder to get guys to go, hey, look what we just did. It didn't work, but now we found a formula. You come here, it's going to make a difference, and you're going to get there because there's no denying the following. Last year, at 11-2, what were they, 6th, 7th in the country or whatever at the end, you could feel the momentum. You could literally almost touch the momentum. This is failure. This is failure, and there's no other word for it. In a pass-fail world where your goal is make the playoffs or bust, and then you bust, the bust is failure. Now, the failure doesn't have to be permanent, but you've got to figure out how to re-energize yourself, to re-energize your base, to re-energize the people within the program to recruit, to go forward again. Because I agree with Chase. I mean, this is probably the recipe to follow, but recipe might be a good analogy because, like, if you're baking a cake or something and you've got all the ingredients, but you put them in the wrong order or you put them in the wrong the wrong components, you don't use enough baking soda and too much baking powder, or not enough flour and too much sugar, or whatever the case may be, your cake's not going to taste very good, even though you had everything you needed for a good cake. So you do have to figure all of those things out. And now they have to do it in really short order off of what has to be an incredibly bitter feeling.
Last year, they had the culture to win a lot of close games, sustain it. They had a better overall attitude in a lot of different ways. This year was sort of in the middle. It wasn't as bad as 22 when it fell off a cliff there toward the end, but it wasn't as good as last year. And yeah, I mean, then look, there's a difficulty with that. Going into the portal this heavy and trying to figure out how all those pieces go together and do everything together, it is a freaking nightmare in a lot of ways to do. But that is, I guess here's the thing: is Lane has shifted a little toward high school recruiting. He's looking at this as a program a little more. There's no doubt about that. But you're in this. I think when you're putting the money in like Ole Miss is, the reason why this is even a bigger look, this loss today, or the three losses together, however you want to put it, Ole Miss missing the playoff. Forget what game you put more on.
Yeah.
There's a couple levels to this. You had a talented enough team to win playoff games and make a run at the national title because you were good at quarterback and good defensive line, blah, blah, blah. We get that. But on a larger note, it was proof of concept to the collective spending the amount of money. It was the momentum that was present last year would be present again this year to rebuild next year's roster. And in a year, Neal, where we've talked about this in the last 10 days of we don't know what the house settlement's going to look like. You're probably going to have to put one more class together in the traditional format to some extent, maybe a large extent. When you do that, you needed to get in. And then when you're putting a roster together with so much money, it is nothing but pass-fail off making the playoff. So Ole Miss is going to be in these one-year grade periods where you have to make the freaking playoff at some point, or it's going to be a failure again, versus had you made it, you could have reset a little next year. You could have put all the money in, but then, look, I get the games aren't on paper and still people's pissed off when you lose. But if you go 8-4, it's okay. You got in last year. We know this is doable. You had maybe a rookie quarterback with Simmons, blah, 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 blah. Whereas now there's just even more pressure. I mean, Lane Kiffin's not in trouble by any damn stretch of the imagination, but Lane Kiffin had a really bad day today because he went from this completely just clean top of mountain, you can't say a word, to a guy who looks like he lost 3 games he shouldn't have lost this season.
Yeah, I think also because I think you make a good point with, hey, which loss is it that matters the most? Because it's like, don't worry about it. It's the 3 of them collectively.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a common thread in all 3 of the losses. They went in like super overconfident. I mean, the Kentucky game, they thought they were just going to absolutely, curb stomp them. Then they thought they were going to Baton Rouge and winning, and they were moonwalking. And today, we spent the last couple of weeks, everybody, getting patted on the back and everybody telling you how great you are. And then, man, they came in today and they were super flat. It was almost like they just kind of thought like, all right, we'll show up, we'll win. And, we're just kind of, I don't know. I thought that one of the hallmarks of this team was they were not very consistent. And while Kiffin teams have, varied in what you think about them at the high end, like, man, I don't feel like we went this many weeks going like, I don't know which team's going to show up. And to me, that's a unique thing with this group.
It's a unique thing with portal thing too. It's just one of those things that you don't even know till you get in the meat of it. I mean, it's the negative that we always talk about when you go so portal heavy is you have a really hard time identifying and understanding what that culture and consistency is going to come from. That's what I'm saying. I thought they were a really consistent football team a year ago. They won all these one-score games. They stayed in the moment. Even Georgia, they just got their ass kicked. Whatever. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
it wasn't about
it's like
that was a really consistent football team.
The games they lost last year, they physically got manhandled. Like Alabama ran over them, and then Georgia ran over them. But
and it's something and look, I'm not blaming this because when you look at Ole Miss's top guys in the portal, and I'd have to go through and look at their roster to see if I'm missing somebody, but the ones that they probably paid the most money to, Juice Wells is the only true bust. I mean, Neal, I don't think that's a bad word. I mean, I've got his stats up here, and outside of one game, Wells only had more than 70 yards receiving one time, and in the final 5 games of the season, he had whatever he had today, 27, 59, 39, and 0. Also had 0 against Kentucky. I mean, that's fair. point being, for the most part, Ole Miss got the hits out of the guys that they paid the most money to. I mean, you mentioned them. You got Nolan and you got Paul and like whatever. I mean, they actually hit on those guys. It just didn't lead to consistency in any way there. And at some point, that's what the staff's biggest challenge is every season, and where they failed was, this is it. You have to be consistent day in and day out because you can't lose 3 games. Drew, thanks for the super chat. Your 20th. Appreciate you as always. How loud is the voice of a growing number of Ole Miss players that transferred to Ole Miss and did not play? How will it impact portal recruiting? Will money overcome that? I mean, I guess there's a couple that would have in their minds gripes there. I think Ole Miss still probably has a pretty decent reputation as a portal school. I mean, I think you can point to a lot of positives, and the staff can almost blame the player a little there, probably.
I will say this though, I'm interested to see. My working theory is that the portal's going to start drying up a little bit, because I think it was a much more effective tool when you had everyone with extra eligibility. Everyone all of a sudden became free to transfer as many times they wanted. So you had a lot more players. I think now we're kind of getting to the point where, guys that are in the portal are kind of in there for a reason, because most of the good teams are keeping the guys that they want to keep. And so I'm curious to know if you can really, is this going to be a long-term solution? And it's like something we'll find out. But Chase, I thought you made another interesting point about, does this add pressure for next year? I'm of the opinion Florida State, if they would have made the playoff, they would not have done what they did in the portal, which was basically going like, screw everybody, we're getting back in the playoff, we're going to spend $13 million, whatever the number was that has been reported.
They're kicking Charleston Southern's ass right now, man.
So that will be 2.
They would win the hell out of the Big South. I mean, just tear it apart.
So $13 million, and you have like the embarrassment season. And so
yes.
The reason why I mentioned that is not saying like, well, that's what's going to happen to Ole Miss next year. But I do think when you build, like Florida State was clearly building for last year. They had their senior quarterback. They had they went all in for last year. And, I think they got screwed. Like, the game should matter. But at the same time, it's like, because of the way the season played out, I think it forced them into a different roster construction than what they would have. And the question now is, like, does that apply to Ole Miss with the way that this season ends up?
And I think there is pressure on you once this happens. I think they'll give you one more chance to do it, and then you have to make a run at this thing. And look, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that the depth chart's going to have to be reinvented in a lot of ways, and that maybe that expectation is not fitting where reality sits, assuming they don't get a lot of guys to come back for that final season. I mean, I had Walker on the podcast last week, and he said that job one would be about retention for players that have eligibility remaining. You essentially try to pay them out of some of the decisions that they have. So we'll see what that looks like. But at the end of the day, no, I think 100%.
It is important to note, in the NIL world, the people going pro has like drastically decreased.
Touchdown for Kentucky as Texas, fitting the pattern that you guys were talking about earlier today. Texas not exactly putting Kentucky away. It's a PAT away from being 7-7 4 minutes into the second quarter. Thank you to Robert Mack for the super chat. He says, I hope someday the Bentley story will be told. What did he do to not play, or is it just the running back coach? I don't know. I mean, you hear stuff. I mean, there are rumors that this week he asked for more NIL. I don't know if that's true or not. There are rumors that they just don't trust him in pass pro. I don't know if that's true or not. There were rumors earlier in the year that he just was not the favored player over Henry Parrish, but Henry Parrish has been gone for a couple of weeks now. And
not the favored player over a converted wide receiver who had not played running back since Utah State as a freshman.
They're going out of their way to not play him. So it's clearly, it's either a bit or it's like they are literally moving guys to not play him. So
look, guys, unless it was the catastrophe of all catastrophes that was going to cause every player on the team to quit, and maybe it was, but if it wasn't, Judkins leaving and or Judkins not leaving sooner is the reason they're not in the playoff in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Because if he leaves sooner, they sign Etienne, and he would have been fine.
Etienne's their running back, and they would have probably, I mean, assuming he was healthy, they would have been really, really good. But they let Quinshon go. Well, actually, they thought they kept him. They thought they had him. That was the reason he played in the Peach Bowl. And then something happened. I mean, his people were always asking for more money. But now listen, before we just completely pin this on Quinshon, and I'm all for pinning it on Quinshon and his family, but in the spirit of being accurate, this is part of the issue with this system. You can't call it pro sports where everybody's renegotiating their contract every 3 weeks. And that's happening a lot.
Hell, every game.
Aaron Judge doesn't go to the Yankees after a hot month of May and go, hey, I don't know if you saw what just happened, but hey, I'm not playing in that series at Kansas City unless you change my deal. That shit doesn't happen. And that shit happens in the college game. It happens at Ole Miss all the time. It happens everywhere else. It's not limited to Ole Miss. It happens everywhere. And it's a train wreck. It's one of the reasons that college coaches privately are like, hell yeah, I'm ready to get the hell out of this. I want to go to the NFL. Can I go to the NFL? I want to go to the NFL. There's a lot of that because you just get to coach ball. At the college game today, you got guys walking in going, hey, I need to get a little bit more this week. They don't have any understanding of how it works, of the money or whatever. And in the moment that you look like you might be half a day late on a payment, they're telling you, I'm not playing. I mean, it's a complete – and in fairness to the fans, if the media would ever start just telling this story, I think we would do – it's difficult. We'd make our lives more miserable, but I think we would open up the real world to what's going on. It's like in recruiting right now. These like Deuce Night, it's literally just going to come down to who has the highest bidder. I mean, all these kinds of it's not who has the best relationship or where they feel at home or where they can feel the most developed. You have a system where a guy can sign in December, he can go and report in January, and if he decides sometime in April that he doesn't like it, he can jump in the portal and leave with no penalty.
Well, I mean, to me, it's like the same point that you're making. Like, I know Michigan's celebrating Bryce Underwood, but you know, my old co-host is a Michigan guy, and I was like, I missed the part where, is he playing tomorrow? Like, even if he shows up on campus, like he can leave literally the next week. And who's to say he didn't just commit to Michigan to just put LSU's back to the wall? Just to, like, it's like some of this stuff used to always happen. Like you always had the pressure, you know, applying leverage for recruiting inducements, but now it's just gotten, man, the fact that like literally you're having players essentially renegotiate their contract week to week, it's insane to me.
Was reading through some of Lane's comments.
Oxford just tied up Brandon 2-2 in the final minutes. So I got pumped for a second. Sorry.
Oh, Brandon's good too.
Brandon's good. We're playing very shorthanded today. We've had a flu, strep throat outbreak. We've got injuries. We're playing down today. We're showing some culture right now.
You've got the mound visit from Bull Durham going, hey, we got a lot of shit going on.
We got a lot of shit going on. Yep, absolutely got a lot going on. I can tell you that I've got an 18-year-old in my house who is physically and mentally exhausted, who needs a break. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I think
before division play starts.
Thanksgiving being a week later feels like everybody's just like checked out already. Like everyone just decided like our body said this is Thanksgiving week and like we should be done already. It just feels like everyone's checked out right now.
Josephine wear red and blue today, Jeffrey. We put her in the wrong outfit.
I guess if we're going over all the film and if we want to like lay it out there, I do have to point out Aaliyah did not put Josephine in her Ole Miss outfit today.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
There you go. Chase had to go run a marathon this week of all weeks, you know. I did really well on games that I attended, and then today I'm home.
Neal's like, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm the one who was sitting there.
I don't want to point fingers, but
the smart thing to do is to point fingers early because that way the more you point fingers early, the less attention you'll draw on anything that you could have done.
Arizona State putting the absolute just beat down on BYU right now. And
oh, really?
Wearing the Sparky helmets while they're at it, which is
so Arizona State or Colorado is going to make the playoff potentially?
Colorado down 17-7, I believe, right now. I think they just scored.
Now Colorado's gone down. Like I think was it when they've gone down a couple of times, like 10-0, and they've regained it. But I mean, like to me, like that's kind of the other thing about today, man. I don't really know what the game plan was, because one thing you can say about Florida knew what their game plan was. Like, they were going to be physical. They were going to do the power run game. They ran a lot of counter. It was like power and counter. So they were pulling a lot of linemen early, and they were very physical. And you could tell, like, their whole plan was, all right, let's get the game to the fourth quarter. Ole Miss just kind of came out and was like, I don't even know like what they were. I don't know what they were attacking. And maybe it's as simple as sometimes your offense just looks bad when you're not winning up front, and they clearly did not win very much up front today on offense.
Yeah, but they moved the ball. I mean, it was still decision making though.
Chase, I interrupted you talking about soccer. I apologize. You were about to say what Lane said, and I interrupted. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he really didn't. Okay, I'll come back and answer that in a second. But, like, the point with the offense, I mean, kind of back to the beginning was, to your point, though, Florida, yeah, they knew exactly what they were trying to do, which was get it in the fourth quarter, do blah, 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 do all these kind of things. Ole Miss should have been playing in somewhat ways the same game plan. You don't need style points. You just need to win. So kick the field goals, know who you are, play defense, let the freshman quarterback get sacked or throw a pick at some point, and just win the football game. Lane was coaching it like he needed style points. But like you said, like he was playing Madden and went, okay, no, B. Like that's kind of where he was sitting there. So it was an odd feel the entire game, especially there after that second series. No, all I saw was Kiffin's opening statement, and it was very much just, missed opportunity. We knew it was on the table, didn't come through, and then he listed out all the failures in independent ways that they had done to get in that shape today. It was nothing that was profound or anything that stuck out too much there.
I'll ask because fans are asking, when he lists out the failures, did he put any on coaching, or
they were all actual on field things? The not scoring in the red zone, the missing a field goal, the short fourth downs, not getting them, not going for them, but not getting them, was the way that I think he phrased that. Let's see.
Yeah, I could go ahead and tell you that there was not going to be a lot of
opening statement. Very disappointing outcome today. Game with lots of missed opportunities. Go 0-3 in the red zone. Miss field goal. Get stopped twice on fourth downs. Lose the turnover margin. Tough place to play against a team that's played really good when that quarterback plays. Credit to him. Really good player who made a lot of plays in the first half. Really disappointed in the outcome. Obviously, a lot was at stake, and we didn't come through. Lost a lot of missed opportunities. Red zone chances, ball in our hands to score a TD, tied the game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it was an 1 minute opening statement for Lane Kiffin.
Now, I mean, the problem is there is some truth to there was some execution. Like,
sure.
I mean, they dropped 3 touchdowns?
Yeah, 2
for sure, and the one that he's probably in, or he's down at the 2.
And then
the Juice Wells one, the one that just has this big flashing light on it. I mean,
now it's also fair to point out, if you're going to throw to Juice Wells, it's been proven at this point that a drop is an option.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about him in the NFL, and I'm like, guys, NFL teams do not pay money for receivers who can't catch.
He does what that LSU kid Brian Kelly was pissed off at. He jumps at everything and uses one hand half the time. It's an odd deal. He is completely outside of what he did well at Carolina, which was get him the ball and let him run with it. And maybe he's not the same player because of the leg. I don't know. But they never even went to that thing. And then, look, Watkins normally catches 2 or 3 of those balls. Daquan Wright had the big drop. I mean, I guess a couple of them were 6 inches overthrown, but those balls are typically caught.
I mean, the one that Wells, he was clearly just trying to make a one-handed catch. And it's like, I'm going to make me a one-handed catch. And it's like, all right, buddy, that's what you deserve. You deserve a drop.
Are you pushing your dog away? You still don't like the dog?
Yes. No, I'm pushing him away because he's trying to do the thing where he just wants attention.
Okay. Well, he saw a camera.
Josephine definitely. Josephine, that girl knows where the camera is at all times.
Yeah. Crowd at Egg Bowl.
Oh.
I like to say this. Today gave a lot of people a lot of excuses to not go.
I mean, actual crowd, 50,000.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere 48, 52.
Went from being 65 to
Coronation. Yeah.
40.
You get to go Berry State. You get to go to the playoff, the whole thing.
Oh, I mean, like I spent this morning lining up stuff for like podcasts and things, and now I feel like texting them all, going, "Don't worry about it, we're good." I mean, I don't even know what. Honestly, I mean, as it's hitting me, I'm recalibrating everything, and I'm like, I don't even know where like you go from here this week. Like, there's not a lot to write. Not previewing a game, nobody cares. It's you do it because it's your job, and that's our brand, is that we do what we do. But if I'm sensing that, I can't even imagine what's going through a locker room. Hey, you got to go you got to go to work Monday, right? And you're like looking at each other going, what are we doing? I mean, we're playing this game. It means nothing. Because had they won today and they beat State, it's like you said, Chase, it's a great word. It's a coronation. It's, hey, are we hosting or not?
Oh, it's a party on Friday. I mean, a damn party.
It goes from that to, no, it's like, are you going to go to the, what do they call the Outback Bowl now? The ReliaQuest Bowl. And if you're one of those bowls, do you even want Ole Miss? If you're the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville, do you even want Ole Miss? I mean, if you can choose between 7-5 Vanderbilt or 9-3 Ole Miss, if you're a bowl, you're like,
And I don't think you can take. Can you not? Don't you have to take the team that's got the best record, or a team within one game?
I don't know what the rules are.
No. I don't know how the rules, because now some of the access bowls are going to be the playoff games. So I don't even know. I mean, I think though, Neal, to your point, right? The question now is, where do they go from here? Right? It's nothing. It no longer is about the competitive enterprise. It's like, what is their? You have
to turn your focus to the portal, to recruiting. You got to finish the deal in recruiting. You got to turn your focus to the portal. You've got to somehow maintain the kind of energy and synergy that you've had. And you've got to figure out which players on your team can be the best recruiters in the portal. Because let's face it, Jackson Dart, Jared Ivey, J.J. Pegues, Jordan Watkins, those guys played huge roles in recruiting last year. And now they're not there. So who are your guys that are going to step in and recruit? You've got a monumental roster turnover headed your way, probably. You've got a lot. I mean, you listen, there's no spinning this. And so anyone who tries to spin it, God bless you, I guess. I mean, this is a disaster. This was losing a game as a double-digit favorite. When this game kicked off, Ole Miss was a 13-point favorite. Losing a game as
Ole Miss did that twice this season. They're going to miss the playoffs because they were a 17-point favorite and a 13-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's the wildest damn thing, right? You're trying to figure out, like I wrote this in my column, which is up at rebelgrove.com. If you had said before the season, hey, this team goes 9-3, you would have said, okay, well, they lost to Georgia, they lost to LSU, and maybe South Carolina turned out to be better than they thought. No, they beat South Carolina and Georgia by a combined, 25 and 18, 43 points. They beat those two teams by 43 points. They lost to Kentucky, which right now is losing to Texas. Kentucky is 2.5 quarters from being 1-7 in the SEC. And they lost to Florida, who is probably going to go 7-5. That's who they lost to. Those are the losses that killed them.
Right there.
I mean, that's devastating. You'd rather lose the other way, where you're like, man, Georgia's just a rolling ball of butcher knives. I mean, they just like they're a walking, talking human chainsaw. They just chop through everyone, right? That's not what happened. 2 weeks ago today, Ole Miss beat Georgia by 18 points, and frankly, it didn't feel that close. And then you go to Gainesville and you can't get it done, and all you had to do was just score one more point. That's going to be tough to overcome. That is going to be a lot of mental gymnastics to overcome. There's no spinning it. That's why I'm going to use the word. It's failure. And that's hard.
I mean, I think to me it's like it was clearly an experienced team, but it was not a mature football team. And like I don't mind talking about this team in the past tense for everything that we're saying because like I'm with Neal. Like there's no way to spin it. Like this season's a failure. So I to me it's just like the story for this team will be their good was really damn good, man. Like it was. Like I'm not even trying to downplay. Like they kicked Georgia's ass in a way that we haven't really like Georgia's lost games, but we haven't seen Georgia get beat like that.
Not like that.
And I mean, they completely dominated a South Carolina team that has turned out to be pretty good. And then what they did in Arkansas, I mean, there's just not a lot of teams that win SEC games on the road by like whatever 38, whatever it was, and putting up 7 touchdowns. And you know, that's the same team that loses to Kentucky at home. That's the same team that goes to Florida today. And I mean, it was just a really immature football team and an inconsistent football team.
And played LSU in a first half where you should have been up 20. Where, yes, LSU made a ton of plays, but you did everything to keep them in that football game for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah,
everything.
Like credit goes to LSU for making the plays late, but those plays shouldn't even have mattered.
And somebody's asking who all actually has a year of eligibility remaining. I have no idea. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd have to
be
go.
A Monday, Tuesday thing.
I'd have to go look at it.
Hey, if Diego wins a lawsuit, everybody might.
Good point.
Well, fair.
JUCO
not counting in eligibility would be a major issue.
No, but I did.
Well, if JUCO
did see like what his attorneys essentially doing is they're trying to say that they're trying to say that eligibility is essentially a non-compete.
Until the NCAA loses one. I mean, why not?
Listen,
or wins one. I mean,
he did not get the TRO, but literally all it takes is one judge going, yeah, that's right.
I know. I get it.
It's one of those deals where if you could truly write everything that happened behind the scenes inside this program in this season, it'd be a bestseller, but you'd have to move.
Let's just say this: it's a show that would have to be on HBO. That couldn't be on basic cable.
No. And that, but
I guess here's my question to that, Neal. Though,
but that kind of happens everywhere. Because it's humans. Humans have human stuff.
But there's going to be more of them when Ole Miss took that jump to bringing in all the top portal players. First year they did that. First year they went, hey, prima donna or damn, I don't care. We're going to go get the dudes. We're going to do it this way. We're just going to put the roster together. And yeah, we're worried about culture, but hey, and again, I'm not pointing out Walter Nolan specifically, but like we're just going to get Walter Nolan because he wrecks defenses or wrecks offenses. Okay, cool, sweet. That's different than 23. That's different than 22. They weren't playing as highly consistently in those waters. And when you do that, you're raising your stakes for catastrophe when it comes to the things you're talking about and what all's going on. And yeah, again, it's just happening in general. I mean, Ole Miss had at least one or two good players, but not elite players that did threaten the whole, hey, we'll not play if so-and-so here or there. I mean, that has happened.
Mississippi State leads.
I think another flaw.
14.
See if you'll agree with this. And I guess maybe the problem is they did have the guy, but he's got a torn groin. This team never had like a go-to playmaker. Like,
I mean, it was Trey, but yeah.
Like, to me, like, that's kind of the other thing. It's like, man, who was someone that, like you said, Watkins is like a solid 2, but it's like, man, who was just somebody that just could make a freaking play for you?
And you had no running back.
Correct.
They played the entire season with, Parrish was fine. They had one average to slightly above average SEC running back, and that was it. That's all they had, period. And Lane hasn't really added anything out of the high school ranks. I mean, Rascano's no longer here. Didn't sign one in at least 1 year, maybe 2. Something like that. I mean, it shows how good they were in certain areas that they could be, frankly, bad in a couple areas and still be where they were and have the opportunities and the expectations as indicated at that point. Yeah, I do think, Neal, does Daquan Wright have another year?
Yes.
That would be a big start with him.
He told me that he intends to come back.
There's one of your portal recruiters.
He went to Ole Miss intending to play 2 seasons.
Okay.
And who would have ever thought that he was the better tight end this year?
Yeah.
It wasn't even close.
In fairness, though, how much was Prescorn healthy this year?
Probably not very.
But I agree with you. I think the kid's been great.
Does Paul have another year left?
He does. The rumor on him
probably can't help his stock, though.
The rumor on him is he's gone.
Okay. Daughtery has time left.
He does, and he'll stay.
Yeah. Perkins is obviously back. He's a true sophomore.
Been coming back, but at a much elevated price tag, thanks to our friends on the plains. They have. And hey, look, and this is not a criticism. Hey, it's all fair game. It's all fair game. But Auburn has raised the price tag on Suntaran Perkins significantly.
The one thing I guess that you can say at least about next year is you do have an exciting young quarterback. He's unproven, but
Oh yeah, you think you got the guy, and look, that saves you a ton of money. If you had to go buy a damn quarterback in the portal, your budget's different because that cat's 7 figures to get one that's trying to get you in playoff contention, and that's where Ole Miss is trying to be every year. Look, Nathan's got a good point here. Parrish was as good as anyone had a reason to expect him to be. They just asked him to play a bigger role than he should have been playing. 100% right. Henry Parrish was fine. He did exactly what you would have expected Henry Parrish to do, a T.
Yeah.
When you go into the preseason and go, hey, guess Henry Parrish's situation. Exactly what he did.
They could have used him today.
Was Bentley catching kicks at all today? They haven't been catching kicks.
He definitely returned the last one. I don't know if he returned all of them. Somebody's wanting to be. She's she heard. Hey, there's. Is it your fault they lost today? Why were you 11-2 last year?
She said, "Yeah,
it was your fault.
She just
did not wear your clothes.
blame.
You're the opposite of Lane Kiffin. You will take the blame. You're not going to blame him.
But next year, if playing's the same, that's the thing. It's not the same. It's a matter of putting the right guys together every time. You went 11-2 last year. You would have made the playoffs. 11-2 is a playoff team.
A lot happening here.
Daniel says, "Are y'all happy to finally say it's a failure?" No. We listen. We'd spent.
Guys, I bet on Ole Miss today.
We'd spent.
I would love to be talking the other side. I'll be honest. From a business and what to talk about standpoint, it wasn't like red and blue pom poms. It was for my own livelihood. I kind of sat there on the bed and had kind of a 10 minutes. Oh shit. I kind of got down and depressed for a minute.
Yeah, we spent the week talking about how we would cover travel expenses for a playoff run. That's what we did. Because you needed to do it. It's why I say to people all the time when people come up to me and they're like, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, I can't let myself go there. If I let myself go down that road, I can't do this show 15 minutes after the game. I wouldn't be able to do it if I were like, "Oh my God, I just lost however many subscribers we'll lose. Lost all the momentum that we had on." You can't go there. If you do that, you literally cannot perform professionally. So that's why I don't do it. Just don't. But yeah, no. If the football gods had come down and said, "Do you want them to win or lose?" I'm like, win. Unfortunately, they did not come down and ask whether I wanted them to win or lose. That's not how it works. That's why I always tell people all the time, I have no input at all into what ultimately happens, and I have to be prepared either way. And so that's what you do.
Yeah, Ptolemy here says many more lessons, clicks, and subscriptions with a playoff team than a team getting ready for the Gator Bowl. It's not even that. It's not that. It's that the entire next 12 months are different in a lot of ways. You make the playoff, and it was going to be this entire honeymoon of an off season that is structured differently.
JG Swinger says, "Neal, you need to go back to Kroger and find that girl and tell her everything is not going to be all right." That's a good point. Hey, but it wasn't the committee.
She was justified, and you made fun of her. Look at it.
Well, the committee is not what took her down. It was Florida.
Okay.
In fairness.
Yeah, in fairness, this wasn't I will say this, if you want to say whether or not you're happy, it's no, I would much rather my whole family be happy and not have to hear my wife tell me, "See, I told you they were going to lose all day." But I am glad that at least it was definitive. Like, this isn't a committee thing that, like we're not arguing about whether or not they got screwed from a resume. Like, I am at least it was decided by the football team. It wasn't decided by, it wasn't a judge's decision is what I mean.
Well, yeah. And had the football gods come down and said, hey, they're not going to make it, you can either be because they lose to Florida or because the committee screws them, I'd go, let them lose in games.
Well, and like in some ways I was like, it was a little frustrated too, because I had some Ole Miss fans texting me during the game going, hey, told you the whole time they weren't going to make the playoff. And it's like, no, because you're pessimistic and you're frustrated and you're emotional, not because you called me and said, you know what, JJ Pegues is going to go outside instead of inside when they do these fourth down things. And Florida's going to stop that. And that's really why I'm really worried about the expectations. It's that everybody was just like geared up into this expecting either the way positive or the way negative or whatever was going on there. By the way,
so I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
Did the Georgia run, the Georgia one where he bounced it and damn near broke it? Like, I almost wonder if
he had not been going
plane,
outside. I mean,
correct, because everything had been just like
Florida has that really big inside, and I don't know if it was just strictly strategic in some way, or you're right. Like, we're certainly starting to, and I can't decide whether it was because it's not a 5. It was really stupid or really smart to put Dart out there on that chip block, because I do think if you get any piece of him at all, that is sprung. But you're also asking the quarterback to get a piece of a front 7 defender.
But it's also
in a short yardage play.
It's why I don't think that's what the play design was.
Yeah. Right. Like,
Lane can be cocky. I've never seen him be like,
hey, had it been an option play and he pitched it to Jackson, it was going to be a touchdown.
Like, I've never seen Lane Kiffin go, you know what I think's a great scheme and a great play design? Having my quarterback seal the edge.
Texas goes up 21-7 on Kentucky. So Texas
State got a score. That line's smelling like it reeked all week.
It's 14.
I had mine's half of my complete non sequitur, but I'm just curious of thoughts. Half my plane yesterday was Ole Miss students going to Philadelphia. Is it that many out of state in the Northeast, or do you think they were like taking a trip somewhere or connecting somewhere?
Were they all running a marathon?
It was like, I mean, probably not. It was.
Sure, they were going home for Thanksgiving. There's
that many just in the Pennsylvania area that you would be flying into Philly?
Sure.
It's a direct flight, man.
Yeah.
Well, were you on I assume you're on a puddle jumper, right?
Yeah, it was one of those with like the 2 on the one side and 1 on the other. The American Eagle like thing.
CRJ. Hey, at least you flew American and you lived to tell the tale.
We had a 30-minute delay.
No way.
Because the weather in Philadelphia was apparently to get back, and then and then we landed with some rain and stuff, but it was fine. And because I don't know how my body, I mean, it's a very little extra positive, but because I don't know how my body's going to feel Monday flying back, I flew. I mean, first class. It's a puddle jumper, but at least it got like in the front and a little wider seat to get out of there. So that was a little more helpful. There's a little less turbulence and movement there. But it was 75% Ole Miss students.
Well, I mean,
at least
at this point, I mean, what? I mean, didn't you write a story, or I don't know if it was a message board post, but didn't you write in the last couple of weeks about out of state, like admissions, like everything, number of applications? Didn't you say all that was like up big time?
Oh yeah. And the out of state's up. I mean, Ole Miss is probably near and close to 70% out of state at this point.
I mean, that's kind of the other thing. It's like, it's now a proven formula, man. If you win big in football, like, they're probably paying their coach too much, but it's probably money well spent.
Drew, thank you for the super chat. He says, remember when Ole Miss lost to Tulane, Memphis, and Southern Miss and managed to make a bowl game at 6-5, and we're thrilled. Keep perspective.
That team didn't cost $16 million.
It didn't. Penn State's about to go tie Minnesota 17-17 with 19 seconds left in the second quarter.
Stewart, you made me laugh. He says sprint the first 3 miles to get into the clear, uncrowded area.
Yeah.
Thing you don't do tomorrow. I tell you, I did wake up this morning and the half marathon was just starting out, and it was incredibly loud outside my window because where I'm staying is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles into the route. And
I saw where you posted something at like 5:20 in the morning. I'm like, well, at least he took it. He took the advice.
I tried. I went to sleep early, but I woke up. I mean, I was in bed. I didn't move around much, and then I kind of did like sort of a shakeout run. I basically like sort of jogged to the convention center to get my bib, and then back.
Avery says she will not. Avery says she will not keep any perspective at all.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys are there right now. I understand. I mean, I get it.
A lot of them sound like my daughter.
I mean, I don't think the football team was quite 16 million, but total athletic department, yeah, easy, yeah.
I've heard the football team was about 15, 16 million.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I mean,
in college football circles.
I saw this. This was going around one of our group chats, and I strongly disagree, but I'll present it. Brennan wrote on Twitter that at least 12 coaches get this roster to a playoff. I don't really buy that, but I mean, I guess let's bring it as a discussion point.
Here's the problem: is 12 of the coaches wouldn't have been able to put the roster together, so it would have been a moot point.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, like again. Look, today I thought Lane Kiffin left points on the board, and points ended up really mattering. I thought they should have.
Yes, he did not, and not just in hindsight perspective, he did not call a good football game given the flow of the game.
But
Chase and I were texting in real time. We said he should have taken points. Like this isn't like us second guessing. We were.
But now look, here's that thing of. It's along the lines of dance with the girl that brung you. It's who you are. You don't go change your DNA. I mean, it's just who you are. I think he should have kicked. But if you kick it fourth and 1 at the 11 and make a field goal, you kick it fourth and whatever it was and make another short field goal, and you end up losing by 1 point, you kick yourself for not going for scores there. So
yeah, but then you would have only needed another field goal. Like let's say the rest of the scoring plays out. Then when you get down in that last drive, you don't have to score a touchdown.
Yeah,
you need a field goal to win.
But I go back to the last drive. I mean, the drive before the last drive. You're moving the ball. I don't understand the big shot right there. Because if you convert that, guys, and get a touchdown and kick an extra point and tie the game, you give Florida the ball 2 timeouts in a minute and a half. It makes no sense. I go back to that play in my mind. I keep doing it going, I don't get it. I don't
love McElroy as an analyst, but I 100% agree with him. Like Jackson just predetermined. Like I'm throwing here. I'm going deep.
Yeah. Then there's triple coverage, and he throws it anyway. That is completely not who he is.
Correct. So either it was a called shot play, or Jackson made the decision to do that. And based on their offense, I don't believe that they sent in from the sideline, hey, throw it to the guy that we know is going to be triple covered. And like he just misread the play, because the other side of the field was a true, like if you are going to take a shot, even though I don't think throwing to 3 is a successful play, but at least that was a 1-on-1.
Minnesota, by the way,
they blocked the extra point and ran it back.
For 2 points. So it's 19-16 Minnesota, 19 seconds to go in the half. That could end up being a monstrous play. A blocked extra point could be ultimately what hurts Penn State, keeps them out of the playoff. By the way, I know it doesn't matter. I watched Indiana and Ohio State a little bit. It was on the other screen. Indiana's not a playoff team. We should kill that. That's not a playoff team.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Now, I gotta give credit. Cannell's got a brand. He was like, "Yeah, this is a really tough performance from Indiana. Really don't look like a playoff team. Really reminds me of what Texas did against Georgia."
It's fair.
I mean,
They have very similar resumes, if we're just being really honest.
Well, we've already got Sankey. I didn't know. Did you know Sankey was using X, the Everything app, to get his talking points out there?
Was he?
Yeah, he was doing that the other day. Although, I mean, look, we said the playoff would work itself out, and
It
I mean,
kind of has.
At Ole Miss's expense, it kind of did.
And it was right there. Indiana gets the loss. Penn State's in trouble.
Tennessee losing to Vandy next week.
Oh, I mean, the loss gets worse as the hours go by. I mean, you probably were going to host, and you might have hosted yourself into the 7-10 conversation.
Yeah.
Where you didn't have to fly all the way out to Pasadena. You got to go to Atlanta or somewhere and play Bama or Texas.
Listen, I think it was entirely possible. The committee, like, that was the other thing. The committee maybe didn't have them some Ole Miss feels like they do Bama, because I will never understand why Bama gets this benefit of the doubt that even Georgia doesn't, but that's neither here nor there. The committee clearly had eyes for Ole Miss.
It was tier 2.
They wanted Ole Miss. They wanted Ole Miss to make the tournament. They're a big brand now. Lane's a big eyeball catcher. The networks wanted him. I mean, I'm not trying to like get people to
jump off a bridge. Yeah, but please do not listen on multiple stories here. Like, you got to be on solid ground if you're listening here.
But it's a really big loss. There's no way around it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The more I think about it, the more I think it's actually worse than what I just wrote. I mean, there is no spinning this. It's bad.
And frankly, you don't know how bad until you see the results of next year, because you have to see how you get out of it, what it looks like as a program and not a season. Lane has coached seasons.
Yeah.
Now he's got to find a way to coach a program.
But don't you think part of that is because he didn't plan on being here this long?
I mean, I think he does now, though. So that's where you're at.
No, I mean, no. The irony.
I don't mean stuck
for
with
me
badly.
is like,
I'm just saying that's where it's at.
I know Florida had already made the decision at this point, but like that would have been like, let's say Strickland doesn't put that statement out before the Texas game. Like, the irony would be that win today would have kept Billy Napier at Florida, like back-to-back LSU and Ole Miss. Like, that would have kept his job. And now you're at the point where there's not a job for Lane to flirt with this offseason. I suspect they'll try to float his name for some NFL jobs. I don't think that's realistic.
No, and I mean, Lane can't play the game this year. He can't try to float his name for anything out there. He's just got to be the Ole Miss head coach this offseason unless it's the NFL.
No, because he has to maintain program momentum.
That's what I mean.
There was a story. There was a rival story.
This isn't 22.
There was a rival story today about program momentum and who had it and who didn't. And Adam Gorney talked about Florida for the first time in a long time having some momentum. And I mean, that was before today. And so they clearly do. And if you're Lane, you cannot allow this to impact your momentum in December the 4th when guys sign, and then going into the portal. You got to do probably the one thing he's the worst at. And he's got to get, if he's ever going to win big, he's got to get over this. He's got to be, how do I say this without it sounding bad? I'm not saying he's a front runner. I'm not saying that at all. But you've got to get where you can be a grinder. Right? I mean, you've got to get to where even when everything's kind of the wind's in your face and the conditions are bad, you still sort of push through. Maybe it doesn't look great, but you get it done and you get to the other side and you're like, okay, we're good.
I kind of think that he needs to learn to coach like that. Like, today was one of those days, man. Today was one of those days where, like, to me, it was very obvious in the first quarter, hey, this wasn't going to be the Arkansas game. Like, this wasn't going to be the big day, whatnot. Everybody knew what the setup was. It's, you just got to win. And, man, you got to grit your teeth. And sometimes, like, I understand your point, Neal, about, hey, consistently he had been this. But the only thing I would say is, man, the game that we all kind of thought, and nationally, I think that Lane went into a different category, the Georgia game. That's the game that, like, he went against his norm. Like, it was all right, I'm taking points here. Like I just think that like he coaches like it's a video game, man. Like I got to score touchdowns. And it's like, man, today just wasn't going to be one of those days, and I did not feel like that they recognized that.
Oh, I mean, somebody said it in the stream, and I mean, it's identifying one coach, but this is the kind of day today. Nick Saban would just kick some field goals and one kind of ugly and moved on with his day. You know what I mean?
It would have been like you can see it now, like a 14-13 Alabama win at Fayetteville, and it was like 38 degrees. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Tennessee, Texas got it back. Kentucky's put away there. Just had that on the screen. What is the state score?
It's now 14-10,
Missouri.
but Missouri is on the move.
12 minutes to go in the second.
Brady Cook is playing.
He is.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's one of those old school kids who signed with the school because he loves the school and will play his ass off for the school because he loves it.
Yeah, I only have one TV.
I don't say that condescendingly.
Somewhere.
No. But I was actually kind of because I'm fine talking about this. And honestly, I'm not there. I'm not close like when I was covering a team. I know Jackson's your leader, whatnot. Like, I don't know. I just feel like this team was like a collection of players. I don't feel like this was a coherent team, and I didn't sense like unbelievable leadership. It was almost like this team was like week to week, every single week.
Well, like I wrote, at the end of the day, championship contending teams don't lose to Kentucky and Florida this year. They just don't.
Yes.
And the fact that they did shows you that they were flawed. That's just the bottom line. I mean, that's hard. Like I'm kind of rewriting the column in my head as I speak right now. That's a hard thing.
Well, you were trying to write a column literally during the middle. Like we didn't know who was going to win until literally 7 minutes left.
I didn't even start working on the they lose column until about first of the fourth quarter. And even then I didn't put a lot of effort into it. I was putting most of the effort into, hey, they won. Figured it out. It's going to be okay. It was some rough stuff, but they got it done. These count too. I mean, the lead was literally, you didn't think it would be easy, did you? And the answer is, yeah, everyone thought it was going to be easy. And you do wonder, did they get overconfident? Did they go in there thinking this is going to be a breeze? But
they've already gotten bitten by that twice. Like, doing it again, and you go, okay, mindset-wise, woo, boy.
Well, I mean,
that's
right.
kind of my point. That's my point about leadership.
You put your hand on a stove once and get burned. You go, ooh, that was hot. And everybody goes, oh, bless your heart. You didn't know, did you? Oh, come on. Come here, sweetie. Well, the second time you look at the kid and go, are you crazy? And the third time you start going, you're an idiot, right? I mean, what is wrong? That's them.
Yeah, Joseph, I mean, Jeffrey's our uniform connoisseur from a quarterback perspective. I don't think you can blame the losses on Dart wearing the visor and the arm sleeves or not. I think that probably feels
What was this red thing? What was this red thing? He had some kind of like, it looked like it was like a whoop. Like what was he?
Well, was
was it a whoop?
There was one play where he went down, and I said, "Well, at least his helmet didn't come off."
Yeah, I was Neal and I were texting each other, and I was like, nothing drives me more insane. Like all of us can buckle up our.
Well, that was a really critical third down. He came out of the game on. Like, holy crap!
Three times.
Yeah, I mean that mattered right there.
And by the way, I don't think his helmet looks that cool. Like, it'd be one thing if I was like, man, Jackson looks really cool. It's like, I don't think his helmet looks that cool. And so he wears it in a way that it pops off all the time and you miss key plays. Like, that drives me insane.
It's a new arm sleeve they have. It's supposed to look like two arm sleeves. Okay.
Yeah, I think we've officially hit the point of we're out of accessories. You know what
Missouri
I mean? Like
Missouri up 21-10 now, 9:58 to go in the
Trey
second.
Amos wears them, they say, but that's fine. My cornerback one can wear whatever he wants to. Like, he's a head case. He can do whatever he wants. That's fine.
We're talking about the quarterback.
Yeah. Different deal.
This is a different
I want my corner to be a little psychotic at times.
Oh yeah.
I want my corner. Honestly,
I want
my corner, my number one receivers. Like, Like, I'm kind of cool with George Pickens being my number one receiver.
Who was the
I
former like really all pro corner that was like always getting in trouble? Was it Marcus Peters? Where you went, yeah, he'll play for me. It's fine.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
really care what you do. It's cool. It's all right.
You want those people to be right on the edge of having a SWAT team at their door.
Yeah,
Kind of not what you don't want that from your quarterback, though. You want your quarterback to be.
Listen, I think it's a fair criticism of Carson Beck, the arm sleeve tat. That's not a quarterback look.
I mean, I'm with you.
Like, I'm sorry if that makes me like someone wants to label me like a MAGA racist or whatever. It's like, I don't believe my quarterback's having arm sleeves. Who was our Swaggy Pete? Neal didn't put any tattoos on his shooting arm because that arm's for buckets. That arm's for business.
It's science.
Yeah.
Science.
By the way, we have more Mississippi State fans watching this or their game.
Yeah, I see a lot of trolls coming through right now. Florida and State. That's been.
We've got Brian. I'm trying to build it where I can add Brian in. So that's what is happening here right now. Your boy is technologically challenged at this moment, but I'm trying to remember how we did this.
If we need an update on how the fan base is doing, Aaliyah has officially made her own sangria.
Oh, what flavor?
What flavor, honey? It's a cranberry vodka sangria with rosé. So, she's trying to forget her rebels.
Chase, I want to go to new camera overlay and add it in and then put him in it. Is that right?
Well, I mean, that's fine. Yeah, that works. Go to overlay.
I can see and hear you off. That helps.
Yeah, Brian can hear us. We can hear him. But yes, that's what you do.
Okay, I'm working on it.
Yeah, there you go. Hello, Brian. I got to. Yeah, no alcohol tonight.
Look at me, man.
I can't pull off the
You
Neal.
can't
Have 3 beers and a glass of wine the night before a marathon.
Well,
I don't
but
know
that's
how
also
in the
not
world
his
you did
first.
that.
Did you do that before your first one though?
Yeah.
Yes.
I still remember him think my favorite Neal marathon was him thinking the Big Sur when like, oh man, this will be great because look at the scenery on us.
Scenery, my ass.
It was like a mile up and down, like the elevation changes were insane.
The middle of that bitch running up that hill, it was like this, and your ankles.
Was that the one you tore your hamstring in the middle of it?
Basically, yeah, it was brutal.
The last 6 miles tomorrow are dead into a headwind by the river.
That's not what you asked for.
That's not good.
Yo, you drank beer before a marathon?
2 and a glass of wine. I wouldn't
That's
sleep
pretty
if my
impressive.
heart rate would be like
Honestly.
180 in the first mile.
And didn't
Did
sleep.
you rip some cigs too while you were at it? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I had some Marlboros. No, I didn't. I did not smoke, but I did.
That is, Chase. That is kind of the Barney Stinson, like the
Step one, start running. There is no step 2. Oh God.
Yeah, I remember after Big Sur, they had massage tables, and I was just in agony, and I could barely walk, and I got to the massage table, and the lady was like, "What's tight?" And I was like, "My hamstrings, my glutes, calves, quads, hip flexors." And she's like, "Well, lay on your stomach. Let me work on your hamstrings." And she was like, her first words were like, "Are you really muscular?" And I was like, no, it's just, I'm done. It's over. I mean,
Would you like a Hugh Freeze?
Yeah, she did say, "Do you coach at Auburn?" And I said, no.
We love you long time.
You coach Liberty? I said no, but no, seriously. There's nothing I could do, and that was the hills. And after that, I vowed if I ever do this again, I'm running on flat ground. All right,
Brian,
let's move on. Let's move on from marathon talk, Brian. We've all kind of. I said,
who have you heard from? Like, what's the mood of the Ole Miss fan base? What are you getting in your inbox these days? These hours.
It's complete Armageddon. I haven't really sifted through all of them, but I mean, I'm in a couple of group texts with like guys I went to school with, and it's just complete like agony. A lot of anger. I kind of relate to him in that sense. I was pretty dumbfounded as to what I watched today. I thought that was pretty wild. But I don't know. It seems pretty typical of this team at this point. I mean, there's clearly a recipe to all this, right? I mean, that was the LSU game with a couple of different, shades of uniform on in terms of how the flow of that game went. There's something to this now. When Ole Miss plays as a favorite with real expectations on the line, they clam up. I mean, the game plan and the play calling was absolutely horrendous. And like the Dart meltdown at the end was really bad, but he was really good for about 2.5 quarters. And I think that will distract from the fact that I just kind of find this to be a completely unserious coaching staff. I mean, they lost to 3 unranked teams in very similar fashion this year. And at the end of the day, I don't know, I think a coaching staff's job is to try to extract the best version of a team on a week-to-week basis. And I think the best version of this team was one that had a shot to win a national title, I think, or at least in the mix, and beat Georgia. But they didn't get the best version of this team often enough, and that falls on the coaching staff. So I'm sure he'll tweet about a bunch of really interesting stuff, and blame will fall everywhere. But I mean, this is on Lane Kiffin and the coaching staff. I find this whole thing to be unserious.
You make a great point right there, because Lane likes to often refer to Nick Saban a lot and his years there and what he learned. But the hallmark of a Nick Saban team was that it didn't ever really ride the roller coaster.
Yeah, they don't do this. They don't lose games like this.
Yeah, the hallmark of
you could beat them, but they didn't have, you could beat them, but you had to play. That was the other thing, because I kind of agreed with Chase's point. Brent, I don't know how you feel about it. It wasn't like Florida had this out-of-body experience. They just kind of played their game.
Yeah.
Like, I thought Lagway there was 1 or 2 escapes in the first half where you're like, okay, that's kind of unfortunate. That's kind of unlucky. But for the most part, it was just kind of like ho-hum.
I totally agree. They let Ole Miss throw up on themselves, and that's exactly what they did. I mean, the whole roller coaster and like the short yardage situations is so wild to me. Like the second time they got stuffed in the red zone on the 4th and short, I was literally sitting there thinking, would they have been better off if Dart had gotten sacked and like saved Lane from himself, and they just took the points there and kicked a field goal? And the fact that that's even like a thought exercise at that point is truly wild. And I mean, we're at the point now. I don't know the Ulysses Bentley thing. I hate rehashing it over and over again, but they played a punt return specialist wide receiver that I learned today actually played some running back at Air Force. So congrats to him. Thanks for his partial service. But they put him at running back over Ulysses Bentley. I mean, this whole thing is just kind of, I keep using the word unserious. It's just kind of a circus and a joke.
No,
I mean,
like literally I was asking, is it a bit? Because like at this point, like
I have no clue.
I mean,
it's like you were going so far out of your way
right?
to not play him at running back that it's almost like it has to be a bit.
But it can't be a bit. I mean, there's just no way it's a bit. But I understand what you're saying, but I mean, there's no way it's a bit. And so you come back to, okay, well then why the hell why did you keep him? Because they paid to keep him.
Because that's the whole thing. It's like, all right, maybe he's not your starting running back or whatever. You've decided in camp. But you have had so many injuries now that it's like, if you're not going to play him now, why is he still on your roster? That's what I don't understand. I'm not even trying to relitigate this in terms of why Bentley should be playing over the other running. I'm literally saying, why is he even on your team?
But yet he's elusive enough to return kicks. They have him back there for that. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's complete nonsense.
He asked for more money and you said no, and so he didn't get any carries, but you put him back to return kicks? Well, what if he actually returns a kick? I mean, you don't trust him to run the football, but you do trust him to return a kick? It's nonsensical. All of it.
But then how many times did Micah or whatever return punts? I feel like that was the first time I've seen him return punts.
No, he's been back there most of the season.
He's been doing that most of the year.
Okay.
Here's my question is like, we've been told week over week over week, including on Monday, that the first team offensive line, second team offensive line, everybody's healthy. I assume that includes Jaden Williams, who I watched warm up against Arkansas, against Georgia, and he doesn't play. And then today, when Pettis goes down, they still don't put Williams in. I'm like, so is he not healthy? Is he back in the doghouse? What is the deal? Like, I don't understand some of the stuff. And frankly, all of the stuff happens on one end of the football.
It's on offense. And Neal, to your point, to add on to that, Jaden Williams played in the short yardage packages. They wouldn't put him in. If you'd have told me at the beginning of the year, 2 games into the season, like who's their best lineman based on like a 3-4 game sample size, Williams is probably in the mix for that, right? He's their left tackle. He surely wasn't their problem. Now he's healthy enough to play, and they just continue to stick with their guys. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Yet he came in on 2 different occasions on the short yardage package, but he's not healthy enough to play left tackle. They're just going to ride it out with pounds and whatever the hell else it is. It doesn't make any sense. Caleb Warren, I thought, was a pretty good lineman on this team. Played a lot of football. Just doesn't play. He got hurt before the season and doesn't play. None of it makes any sense to me.
I completely forgot Caleb Warren.
He was a 3 year, yeah, exactly. And he was 2.5, 3 year starter, basically. Played a ton of snaps.
A really good running guard, run blocking guard. Really good run blocking guard.
Jeremy James.
Yeah, but instead they'll just slide Jaquan Scott to center when McIntyre goes out and not.
Jeremy James has the program record for most career starts in a row, or period. I don't know, one or the other, whatever.
But I mean, to Brian's main point, and we've all kind of said some version of this, but I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with him. It all happens on one side of the ball.
28-10, Missouri now.
So maybe let's keep it on. Come on, drink. There's nothing worse than being on what you know is the squarest play of the week, but you're like, I know this is right. It's like, to me, it was like the same thing with, it was like the Missouri game, and then tonight, game of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think through this now. And if we're going to separate it off into different coaching staffs and the way that they kind of operated, there's really nothing been odd about the way Pete has run his defense for personnel wise, has there?
Like they've changed some personnel.
They even moved Kennedy from safety to corner, which was an excellent move as the year went on. People didn't even know Kennedy.
What a concept.
Right, they do things that they made adjustments. Like, okay, this isn't working. Let's try this. But it's not like it doesn't feel like, to Brian's point, it feels like so much of what happens on the offensive side of the ball is like a head game. And it's like some type of like mental warfare. And on defense, it's like, all right, yeah, we've seen some different guys play, but it all feels like it's in the spirit of they're trying to figure out who their best guys are.
And to Jeffrey, to your point, everything's mental warfare. Everything's a head game, down to the injury report. I mean, Lane, I always thought Lane coming out and saying this week that Trey Harris, it's great to have the best receiver in the SEC back on Monday when he doesn't comment on injuries otherwise, is bizarre. And he clearly wasn't fully healthy. And there have been a bunch of conflicting information about the severity of his injury for like 3 weeks now. They run him back out there. He clearly re-aggravates the same thing. And it all starts on Monday when Lane, again, who doesn't talk about injuries at all, just all of a sudden offers up, oh, it's great to have the best receiver in the SEC back in full go. Like, it's under such a troll job. As soon as he said that, I was like, okay, something's off here. Like, something's probably up. Everything's mental warfare. And it just gets old, and it's kind of odd. And with this offense, if they're not gifted a 7-0 lead where they don't score a touchdown on script, it seems like everything goes haywire. And to Jeffrey's point, on defense, they make adjustments to where they improve. On offense, it just turns into like a snowballing shit show, for the lack of a better phrase. I don't understand it. Like, if they don't score early in the game and they don't get off to a great start, the slightest bit of offensive adversity, they just go into a shell.
Yeah, because I saw some people saying this was the Kentucky game all over again. I actually thought it was a combination of the Kentucky and the LSU law. Like, the same things that bit them in both games kind of combined into this one, because the Kentucky one, at least they scored on their first drive, right? They didn't score on their first drive today. And so to Brian's point, like, when they don't have a lead, they do this weird panic thing, like, or like they're trying to, like, it feels like they exert so much energy trying to make it sure, like, that they get the lead back. And so it almost becomes like, it feels like that adds an additional stress. But like the same things that got them against LSU, which was just, like, honestly, arrogance and just like saying, like, we're going to score, we're gonna go for it, like all this. It's like the same things that plagued them in that game was what got them in this one.
Arrogance is one of the top 3 words I would use to describe this season, if you're kind of right in the obit.
Well, here's the other thing too, guys, is we talk about this like it's some aberration. They've played 7 games. They didn't forget the first 4. Those were jokes. I mean, everybody would have won those first 4 games. They've played 7 games, and this has happened 3 times. That's carry the 1, and that's almost half the time.
Dave Doran didn't beat Wake this year. No.
Good point, Chase. I stand corrected.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
Dave Doran's roster was a little different.
Good idea.
Dave Doran doesn't have a Walter Nolan.
I don't know if you know anything about that Wake game, but literally his quarterback retired during the game. I'm not saying that's a.
Oh, is
fair
that
comp.
when he hung it up?
Yes, Grayson McCall literally got hit in the head with his helmet off.
Yeah, Golding's back next year. He's back next year.
Yeah, he's back.
He's not going anywhere.
I mean, that's the thing, man. We're not going to see a ton of movement this year because everybody's sitting there going, like, I mean, some people are going to have to hire some coordinators, I guess, but like Hugh's clearly going to have to, I don't know, hire 8 new coaches. Florida State's going to have to hire a bunch of new coaches, but like people aren't firing their. I just don't think there's going to be like a ton of movement.
You mean period? We still have 0 Power 4 openings.
I mean, it's possible. What? It's possible we don't have any SEC openings. I mean, I know there's the room. It kind of depends on who you're talking to. It feels to me like Arkansas is doing that thing where some Arkansas people want Pittman gone, and some are, as long as he wins today, they're happy keeping him. So you get like the conflicting information with Arkansas. But it's entirely possible we have 0 changes, and so only the people
I think Arkansas's decision, Jeffrey, is purely financial. I think they are so uncertain about what to do in an uncertain time in terms of the revenue sharing.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of what we're seeing. That's kind of why everybody's saying this.
Hold on, but like it's not only revenue sharing, and Chase probably knows where I'm going with this. It's okay if you do the revenue sharing, and let's call it $22 million. How many million on top of that from your collective do you need to truly be competitive? And so if that number's just another 3 or 4 million, that's one thing. If that number, no, it's still the same. You need another $15 million. Oh, okay. And we got to give a coach that's going out $20 million. I mean, there's a lot.
By the way, what did they just put into their basketball program?
Yeah, a lot. And then who do you go get at that point? Because let's say you're going to go get, I mean, realistically, the names that you hear there that have some probably reality to them is Barry Odom at UNLV, John Sumrall at Tulane. What would those guys want? What would it take? What kind of NIL promise would they need to take the job? There's just so many unknowns. That's why at the end of the day, I still think at Arkansas it's a 50-50 coin flip.
My somewhat educated guess for departmental-wide money going to players in the SEC is going to be somewhere around $27 million. That's a guess. That's 20 point something is what the revenue number is actually going to be. I don't know. Glenn Boyce told me the exact number, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. 20 point something million. The Austin payments are about $4 million that will continue, and they can count for revenue sharing, but they don't have to. So SEC schools are going to give that on top of that. And then I think the NIL only game is still probably $3 to $4 million a year, something like that.
Yeah,
that's a guess.
Does the math at all for Arkansas
26, 27
quote unquote leaves? Like if he leaves and does like the quote unquote retirement thing, does the math on the money change at all for Arkansas if it's not just a firing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if one of those deals,
why would he leave $17 million?
Well, he won't. But
yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'd prefer to have $17 million than not. But like
but to your
I didn't know if there's.
To your point,
yeah, if there's a scenario, he just walks away and retires or whatever.
If he said, "Look, I want to get that money, but I don't care if I don't get it right away. If I get it over 6 years, over 7, 8 years, I'll do some fundraising stuff. You can sweeten that pot a little bit." Sure. Would that change things? Yeah, of course. And if you don't have to fork out $15 million today, yeah, sure, of course. That totally changes the game. And then you have a chance, if you're them, presumably to be the only SEC school with an opening, which allows you to go into the bar as the most handsome guy in the bar. Because if there's anybody else in the mix, you're probably not going to be the most handsome guy in the bar. You're gonna have to scrap and call.
It's Jeffrey in Switzerland sophomore year. 55 kids in the house, 15 of which were dudes, 5 of which were gay.
Getting good numbers now.
Correct. It kind of. The problem is that you don't need that to happen sophomore year because then you come back junior year feeling yourself way too much. You're just like, oh, yeah, I got it.
What happened
really
to
found
the Jeffrey? What happened to the young woman that sang the Taylor Swift song while you were playing guitar while y'all were there?
Afton,
Yeah.
perfect example. That girl professed her love for me, and if she would have done that freshman year, I would have been like, absolutely, Afton. But I was like, listen, I just really need to keep my options open right now. And like, I'm not great for you. Afton got married. Like, I hope everybody's sitting down. There's like that, and she still lives in Thousand Oaks. I think they have 3 kids. They have like a Stepford family. Like, her husband's like blonde, blue eyes, just like Afton was. Like they literally look like central casting like California people.
She reminded me of a lot of people I grew up with. Just harmonize anything. You can play any melody for a minute, and we'll harmonize that bad boy.
I am shocked because she could actually sing. Like she never like actively like pursued like rich and fame, but like I think if she would have used social media, like she could have been a much bigger star.
Have you seen these videos, Brian?
What is this?
This is videos of Jeffrey playing the guitar with his Pepperdine classmates singing while he was in Switzerland as a study abroad year or semester or whatever.
It's on YouTube. It's out there.
Yeah.
I was about to ask, is this cable TV? Where would I have seen
No,
this? But
YouTube. We have the links. They've been on the board.
Look that one up. Playing the guitar is pretty cool. I don't have the ability to play a musical instrument. That's probably the one skill in life I wish I had. So congrats to you on that one. That has to
I don't play it very well, and I don't play it in time. So you could tell that was always the problem Afton had is like because I was always playing like punk rock music and like playing really fast and like I didn't start off by counting Afton in. And so she like you can tell, but no, she was uber talented.
Let's see. What year is Kiffin in his contract? I mean, number one, it doesn't matter, but I guess one.
I mean, I guess did today save him $3 million?
No, no.
I mean, can you really bump him up to 12?
No. Sorry, not that. They are going to roll him over and leave it
right,
where
but
it's
did
at.
it say? My question is.
Jeffrey's point is, had they made the playoffs, they probably.
Oh yes, that's a good point. Yeah, if they make the playoff, I think they're paying Lane somewhere between $11 and $12 million a year. Yes, 100%. Yes.
Did anything come of the post-game presser? Did he blame a bunch of other people? I was just curious on how that went, or is he just in shock at this point? I'm sure on Monday we'll get or actually probably Sunday we'll get the whose fault it was.
He just named a bunch of plays. He defended the 4th downs by saying that they usually get those. The ball bounced the other way, and analytics said go for it.
Off tackle with quarterback lead blocking. Defended that one.
All right, Brian. So I propose this. I think because I'm buying in on this the more I think about it because there's no way the play was designed.
Yeah, somebody had to miss something. That's what I thought.
No,
too.
I think Liggins bouncing it outside against Georgia and damn near scoring. I think that like made him start like because he's never been bouncing them like this, like bouncing them wide, and now he's like today like that was his move.
It didn't work.
No, it did not.
How did our soccer end up, McCready?
2-2 tie.
Would you have taken that going into the day, considering the shorthandedness?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes a tie is better than kissing your sister.
Well, it's like sometimes you win a tie and sometimes you lose a tie. It felt like the Chargers today won a tie because any result would have been a big win.
I'm in the process of trying to download Kiffin's post game. By the way, we'll be able to listen to it, watch it if you'd like. Just give me a couple.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Oh, y'all talk away. Just give me a minute.
I guess this is the other thing. Like, my thing on analytics is like, all right, I'm not like the numbers are stupid, but I think we have just gotten to the point where it's like we use it as a crutch because it's almost like coaches are now using it to like have it someone to like, what do you want me to do? The card said go for it. Like you can't question me because I'm just doing what the card says. And my thing is like, I think when you're undermanned using the analytics, like trying to find an edge when you are undermanned, like I get that. Ole Miss in their 3 losses wasn't undermanned. And they just like, to me, it's like they played themselves into the situations that they were in by essentially being way too aggressive.
The analytics doesn't account for the flow of the game and how everything's going and kind of playing the long game, particularly when you're a road favorite and in somebody else's stadium. It's almost like the baseball manager who's going to take the starter out because that's what the analytics tell him to do. And if he does that, that's the easy move. And if he leaves him in too long and it's against the numbers, he'll probably be more likely to get fired. Like, you're right. It's exactly a crutch. I mean, Lane was talking about analytics in his 2022 Arkansas postseason press conference after they just got their shit kicked in for 2.5 hours because he basically punted on that season. It is a crutch. He uses analytics as just like a bastardized buzzword for anything he doesn't like. It's almost like he used to do that with HIPAA during the COVID days. That was fun. HIPAA.
Well, I mean, he got away from it against Georgia and it worked. Like, I mean, to Jeffrey's point, analytics are great, but their deal still does this thing exist. It's the feel of the game and how something is going and what you need. I mean, it's the two things blended and married together that actually make you able to make those decisions on when analytics make sense or not. I mean, you don't just need an AI version out there. I mean, it's what separates Major League Baseball managers because they all have more numbers in the history of the world, and there's a small margin between good and bad, but there is a margin, and it's feel. It's not analytics.
Right, and like my whole deal is sports are not played on spreadsheets. Like, acting as if every single situation is just a coin flip in which, hey, this is an independent event that has no impact. Like that's just not the way sports work. Like, it's the other reason why I hate everyone that bases their whole offense on RPOs, because essentially what it's saying is there's no difference between me and Chase. There's no difference between me and Neal. Every number's the same. Well, guess what? That's not the case. There are some players that are better than others. And just because, like, Freeze used to do this all the time. We didn't win our one-on-ones. Well, yeah, you didn't win your one-on-ones because you asked your freaking right tackle who had one offer to block the best defensive end in the SEC. I can't believe you didn't win that one-on-one. Like, it's kind of the same whole concept. It's like everyone that's trying to essentially make everything into essentially a game of blackjack. It's like, that's not how sports is.
All right, give me 10 seconds here. I'll have Kiffin up, and we'll come back on the other side and talk about what we hear or don't hear.
Okay.
All right, so obviously very disappointing outcome today. A game of a lot of missed opportunities. Go 0 for 3 in the red zone, get no points out of the missed field goal, and get stopped twice on 4th downs. Lose the turnover margin in a tough place to play against a team that, has played really good when that quarterback plays. Credit to him. It's a really good player that made a lot of plays in the first half when we had him back there. So it's really disappointing in the outcome. And obviously a lot was at stake, and we didn't come through. So a lot of missed opportunities. So red zone chances, ball in our hand to, score a touchdown, tie the game, and doesn't go your way sometimes.
Questions? What about the drop passes?
Yeah, very unusual. I think somebody jinxed this week. I think somebody said Jordan's analytics were, 100% catch percentage. And as soon as they said that, I said, I wish you wouldn't have said that. So, I don't know. I don't know if that corner, when you look up, that's where that sun's at, coming that direction. But, that's a great play by Jackson. Great throw. Obviously wish it would have been caught because, we might be sitting here with a much different storyline of, a great game by Jackson and how we overcame adversity in a tough place to play.
And we saw a lot of Micah Davis back there running the ball. Can you just take us through that?
Just trying to get a spark back there, with some speed, and we hadn't had a lot of success in the run game, last about month. So just tried something different.
Lane, on that deep ball to choose, that was picked off the first interception. Was that where Dart was supposed to go? I guess where we kind of see on that play.
Yeah, very unusual by him. obviously wish he'd take it back. Just completely unusual that he would throw that ball in that situation. And, he's usually really good at that. And, said to him right before, we got plenty of time here. We don't need to take shots. And, he went very aggressive on it. And so guy made a lot of really good plays today. And again, I wish we would have caught the one because we might have a much different storyline right now.
I know against Georgia, you have to kick field goals at times. Today, you went for it with JJ. So just what were you seeing or what were you feeling? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, I think that those were probably pretty easy decisions, that instead of getting field goals there when, it's less than 2 yards. JJ's percentage coming in had been great in those situations. He made some other short yardage ones today. So it is what it is when, you play that way. And he's made a lot of those plays too.
The wins this year were blowouts. The losses obviously came in 3 close games. Is there a common thread that you can see by kind of linking the losses, or maybe explaining why that might be that close games aren't going this team's way?
It's football. It happens, The year before, it was the opposite, right? All the close ones went our way. Sometimes the ball bounced that way. Sometimes, when you got opportunities to make plays or situations. That's a pretty easy storyline. They're 2 for 2 in the red zone. We're 0 for 3. We outgained them by 100 yards, but they win the turnover margin. So again, shows how irrelevant yards are versus scoring in the red zone and turnovers.
Lane, I know this is fresh, but how tough do you foresee kind of the next week being up until this Mississippi State game, as far as holding the team together and all that, especially after having a third loss?
Yeah, we're just in today. This is going to be really challenging. It's just a day, so I ain't got to tomorrow yet. There's a lot at stake here and a lot of disappointed players, coaches in that locker room. And this is the new age setup, when kind of there's the playoff line, you kind of know where that is a little bit, and third loss doesn't get you there. So it's just a different world, almost NFL-ish, when you get knocked out of the playoffs, you still got a game to play. But obviously this is an important game, but we'll get that tomorrow.
It's meaningless and hypothetical, but would you have gone for 2 extra scores at the end?
We go over all that stuff. The analytics would tell you not because you're a heavy favorite, but we had the play ready to go. I had thought about it, but I don't know if I would have. I probably wouldn't have because our defense was playing really good. So probably wouldn't have.
When JJ got stopped a couple times short yardage, we haven't really seen him get stopped yet this season. Was that maybe because he was trying to go outside or kind of run off tackle? Was that the design of the play? How did that work out?
Yeah, JJ is awesome, and when you got a D tackle running back there, there's a lot of great things about that. Sometimes he goes on his own, and so he kind of 2 of them he bounced. One I don't really. The guy came off for a tackle, so I can see. The other one he just kind of bounced, and it's worked for him too. So he's been very successful and had some today, and then got stopped today.
You guys have been so good against the run for the most part this season. I think they had 120 rushing yards the first half alone. What was the biggest difference today?
Yeah, I was concerned about it. I think they have a really good offensive line. I think those backs are really good. Even talking to other coaches that played them, the one thing that stuck out is how hard those guys run. So, that was a concern, probably the biggest concern coming in, so he could make them one-dimensional, and they ran really hard and did a really good job.
With Trey going out in the first half, based on what you know, what you've learned from after, was it the same injury that he had been dealing with over the last month?
Yeah, just a freak situation. He got hit right on the same injury, exactly right where it was, and then dropped the ball because of it. So obviously the injury happened, and then we don't get the ball, and we missed the field goal there too, versus having a 1st and 10. So there are a lot of bad breaks today. It is what it is. Sometimes they go their way, sometimes you don't. We got another post corner off his fingers, down to inside the 10-yard line. So, fortunately, a lot of them didn't go our way today.
Anything else for Coach?
All right, guys.
That was Lane Kiffin, post-game in Gainesville. Thoughts, fellas?
We got the analytics just on repeat. That was a lot of fun.
I'll curious to hear what Chase says. I got a lot of thoughts on this.
It's what I expected. I didn't expect a lot of introspection. My guess, and I mean, this isn't because of anything in the stream. I see you're talking about fireworks and post games or whatever. I got a feeling that locker room was really difficult.
Yeah.
Got a hunch that was a very difficult place to be, and I grade him out with like a C or a D on that press conference. It was not good. I'm also curious if there's a little more introspection after you have a little more time. It's one of those, especially Neal knows on the road, you're so fast out of the locker room, that I am at least willing to give some level of pass if that is what I think it was there at that point. I mean, apparently there's video of Princely getting into it with a fan. They're trying to get him off the field. There's a lot of stuff going on in like a 15-minute period.
To paint that picture, it's usually a small space. In the hallway outside of the space, they've already set up like bags of food, whatever, like chicken, burgers, whatever. They're everything, win or lose, starting in about the third quarter is the machination is about how fast can we get out of here, back to bus, back to plane, back home. And so all that continues even on a devastating loss like this. And so you have probably basically chaos in those moments a little bit, where you have the people that are doing their job, which is let's go, let's go, let's go. You have the thing happening with Princely, reportedly. You've got God only knows what you've got in the locker room. People saying things. There are already some rumors about stuff that supposedly happened in the locker room. I don't know what's true, what's not. I have no clue at all. You've got devastated people. You've got people trying to comfort devastated people and at the same time move along. You've just got a lot going on. I thought his answer about Mississippi State was incredibly telling about what was happening in that locker room. Like, guys, I mean, I can't even begin to think about tomorrow right now. I mean, in other words, we're dealing with a lot of stuff at this moment. I mean, yeah, I mean, if State were worth a damn, I'd love State and whatever.
Maybe live.
Whatever the number you'd give me, but they're so bad that I'm not sure it works. Although I will say this, not that it matters at all, because frankly, it doesn't. The one thing State's horrible at is stopping the run, and Ole Miss can't run on anybody. So I don't know.
No.
But regardless, that doesn't matter. If Ole Miss wins on Friday night, we're not writing, oh, wow, look, they won the Egg Bowl stories. That shit's out the door, man. That no one's writing that. We're still going to be writing about this season, and we're going to be describing it as a failure. End of story. If they lose to Mississippi State, it's just like, oh, so we poured some salt in the open wound. That's it.
All completely fair points, but two things on that is, yes, the postgame, particularly on the road, the postgame press conference scenario is often chaotic. Neal, do you remember that time we waited on Longo for like an hour at LSU and he just never came out? Remember that whole deal? It can be chaotic. It's but I'd say the counter to that is, if I wildly, I mean, granted, I'm not a football coach, but if I wildly screw something up at my job, any inkling of self-awareness would lead me to believe immediately that I screwed something up, that I know it's coming. So, like, I get that to some degree, but a lack of introspection, like, I don't know if I let him totally off the hook for that. And then, two, he set up this dynamic. The fact that nothing else matters, that this is playoff or bust. There's going to be plenty of other teams that had playoff hopes this year that didn't make the playoff that aren't just going to mail it in just because in the last week of the season. He set up this dynamic with Last Dance and all this other crap. Like, this is all on him. So if they don't show up next week, they're not off the hook for it just because it doesn't matter anymore. He set up this dynamic himself.
It's a great point. And to add to your point, when you make yourself the sole voice of the program, where you don't ever hear from a coordinator, you don't, like, back then we waited for Longo forever. I don't know why. He never said anything remotely interesting. But when you make yourself the sole voice of the program, you've got to be more Saban-esque. I mean, even after devastating losses, Nick Saban was sort of the same. I mean, you got thoughtful answers. Sometimes you got a little emotion, a little temper, but for the most part, you sort of got Saban. With Kiffin, I mean, look, the answer that the fans wanted was, this is my fault. We weren't ready. My team didn't execute. We didn't get it done. This is on me. This was a big moment. And you're right, Brian. The whole narrative of, hey, the last dance, playoff or bust, all that stuff was them. This isn't a difficult media environment. There's not a lot of hard-hitting reporters. I'm not one either. I mean, there just aren't a whole lot of people that are like in that press conference every Monday asking him really biting questions, hard-hitting, hey, stuff. There's not a lot of people digging into things that happen around the program. For the most part, he kind of gets a free pass, and they set this up. And I mean, like I can't even imagine anybody asking if I'm sure someone will, because God bless them, they have to write that story. They're told to write it. And so they'll ask it. But like, nobody cares about the stupid Egg Bowl this week. It's, what did you learn from this? How do you go into the portal? How do you readjust what you did? What mistakes did you make? People are going to want the result of some introspection on Monday. I doubt seriously they get it.
All right, there was a lot there. So number one, I'll start with, that looked to me like a guy that was in shock that they lost. Like that, like he, you know what I mean? Like, because he was kind of
times this year that they've been in shock that they lost. I mean,
correct. Shocked he's lost, and it's over. Like the whole thing is over too, which adds to it. Two different things.
Number two, Neal can confirm this. I texted him with about 7 minutes left. He's going to do something stupid like score and go for two. He gave the answer that kind of said, yeah, I was going to go for two. Like, he's like, yeah, and then my defense was playing well. He's like, yeah, I was going to go for two. He also even admitted that the analytics when you're a big favorite are different. And so he was trying to say, like, the analytics say go for it, but I know for a fact that some
what
of them
does that
don't.
even mean? Analytics are a different
Exactly.
analytics are analytics. Statistics are statistics. I mean, what does that mean?
It accounts for, so by being a favorite, it accounts for the fact that you are better. But like, that's the whole thing is,
I mean, okay.
The problem that I think most people are going to have with what he said today was basically what he said was like, what do you want me to do about it? Like, wasn't my fault. You know what I mean? And that's why everyone's good. Because, listen, I'm not saying Ole Miss fans deserve national titles. Like, I'm not saying this, but he's got a bunch of fans that are super effing pissed off. And that's the day that, to Neal's point, that's when you eat it, man, and you go, man, I didn't have him ready to go. Because he can gripe about execution, whatnot. And again, we've talked about, I don't know how realistic it is to think about execution when Juice Wells is out there. Like, that guy's not going to execute. That's your fault. You put him on the field. But in the end, man, what's undeniable is that team was not ready to play today. And to me, like,
no, even in the time that even if you don't think you did anything wrong, you go, "Hey, we should have kicked field goals. It's on me." Like, it's an easy thing to do in a press
even
conference.
If you don't believe it.
Complicated. Yeah, just say it.
And Jeffrey, to your point about that, about like what should fan expectations be, his whole thing for the first like 4 years he was here was, if you pony up and pay for this roster and give me the resources, I am the guy that can take you to that next level and have you compete for championships. And he just shit the bed against 3 or 2 unranked opponents. I don't remember if LSU was ranked when Ole Miss played them, or I think they were. But point being, 3 inferior opponents. And yet, when the shoe's on the other foot, he's not saying, yes, I screwed this up. I don't understand how hard that is to do. I don't know how you can leave that game, even in the immediate aftermath, and not think, yeah, I probably screwed that one up. That is a shocking lack of self-awareness to me.
I guess if you want to go down the psychological rabbit hole, maybe the same type of ego that allows him to be successful is the same ego that doesn't allow him to go, my bad.
But it also, what it comes into, and it's what the stream is talking about, the right, it comes the Bentley thing, a bigger deal. It's just another example of, hey, you're getting these questions, but you're not telling the truth. You're talking around it, or you're doing this. Like, there's a perceived, whether Lane knows or thinks that's what he's doing or not, with the fan base, there's a perceived that I'm not going to actually tell you what the truth is or what I'm thinking. And right or wrong, that becomes a bigger problem when fans are footing the bill. They are shareholders.
I've never understood this. Do they, like, coaches that want to do the whole controlled message and whatnot, then they get mad when people speculate because they don't give him anything. It's like you people realize if you're not going to be transparent and you're going to be buttoned up and all this, with the absence of information, there will be speculation. I do not understand. Do they really not get it, or do they just get mad that everybody's just essentially? Do they just want everybody to be a PR agent? Is that what in the end what it really happens? Because I'm always fascinated that coaches can't believe that when you give them nothing, that speculation arises.
Which is 100% of the time and always the truth.
It's
Period.
human nature.
Yeah. I know.
I mean,
So
I
we'll
do
see.
think. Well, so like I wanted to kind of go back to the other thing that we're talking about a little bit earlier, where, all right, he can't flirt with someone this offseason. I don't know, man. I bet he tries because I think that's part of his. I think that's part of how he leverages and gets people to pony up. Like
I don't think it works this time. You had that button
it's
once.
not working this time. It's
That's
almost like
not
he's a
it this time.
narcissist.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm with
I bet it
Jason
still
on
works.
this. I think today, if he did that thing, there would be at least 50% would say peace out.
We did it. We gave you whatever you're seeing. The
bet they try it.
perception is whatever.
But to Jeffrey's point, that might not even be the right decision, right? Like the odds of Lane Kiffin leaving and whoever the next coach is being as good or better than Lane is pretty minuscule, but they're also not wrong for feeling that way.
No, I want to be very clear. Lane Kiffin is the best coach that Ole Miss can get. And the odds are, in my opinion, the analytics are 100% that whoever, if they let him walk and leave, they will not have as good of a coach. With that said, I've not seen I feel like every time I feel like maybe he's evolving as a coach, you just go right. Like when pressure gets on him, man, he just goes back to the kid playing the video game. Like that's just kind of that's the way he's wired. And maybe that's the way human beings are. Like in the end, when you get into pressure and under pressure, you just kind of revert to your wiring.
Yeah. I mean, I'm complete with you. I mean, it's kind of where we started the thing. I mean, it's a team that did not handle prosperity well, big favorites. They didn't handle moments well outside of Georgia. And Georgia was kind of like, nothing to lose in a way. That's a different mentality than 13 and a half up on the road. That's different. It's completely different.
Well,
So
and
how
they
do
knew
you change that though, because that's almost making you change like the behavior and personality and almost DNA in some sense of a coach. Like what changes about that? Like Ole Miss is about to not play another significant football game until next September. What changes to make this any different or any better until then? I have no clue.
All right.
Yeah, they'll have
I haven't seen their
second week of the season next year.
I haven't seen their non-conference, but I'm betting that they don't even play a significant game in those 4 weeks.
Washington State at home is the most significant game.
Okay, so whenever we get their SEC schedule, we'll find out. This team is not playing a game that matters until October.
It's the same schedule. Yeah, it's the same schedule as last year, just inversed.
Yes.
Yikes.
They go to
Georgia next year.
Lexington, Norman, Starkville, and help me, who they play else?
Georgia, as Brian said.
Athens. Yeah, Athens. Yeah, good luck.
Okay, does that make it any better for Lane? Just like, I don't know, 10,000-foot view way down the road here. They're going to go to Lexington. Just on paper, I would guess now they'd be favored. They're going to go to Norman. I mean, I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at this now as opportunities for them to shit the bed as road favorites. I mean, that sounds like landmine after landmine next year.
And then the Starkville one will be one.
Oh, yeah, no, they'll have to be better. They can't get worse. So to your point, yes, definitely another one.
Then they'll go to Athens.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a considerable dog, probably.
Yeah, their non-cons next year are Georgia State, Citadel, Tulane, and Washington State, all at home. So Tulane will be the best non-con they have next year.
It's going to be a long 10 months, y'all.
They got Tulane, you said?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Is that a New Orleans trip at least?
No, it's not. They won't do that anymore. They don't. Ole Miss refuses to play Tulane unless they can play them at the Dome.
Wait, didn't they play him on campus last year?
I think that was
that was what caused it.
Deal.
That also made me think, what's Kiffin's best road win here? Is it a ranked Tulane team with the backup quarterback? What's his best road win? Is it Tennessee 21?
Yeah.
Probably.
Wasn't there an A&M game? I thought that A&M game was that last year?
Jeffrey's talking about 22 after they lost to LSU. They won on the road
Yeah.
at A&M. When I think it was true freshman Wegman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did, but Wegman played well. I mean, I will say this, though. In defense of Kiffin, historically, he has been extremely good as a favorite. This is the outlier. This is the year. And that's why I honestly think a big part of this is, man, I think this team just has no leadership.
You know what this team – now that you say this, I love how we do thought exercises, and your boy kind of brainstorms a little because it takes me a long time these days. The beginning of the year, everybody was like, look at Ole Miss. They're awesome. They had so much respect. They lose to Kentucky. People are like, huh. They lose to LSU. Everybody writes them off. And all of a sudden, they rally around nobody believes in us. They win 3 games in a row. They beat Georgia at home. Back to the respect cycle. Tons of respect. Nobody disrespected Ole Miss over the last 2 weeks. I mean, nobody. I mean, I'm sure
College game day was an Ole Miss circle jerk last weekend.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and today everyone picked them. I mean, people got upset because Nick Saban said he thought Florida would cover. You got that one right.
Literally, the whole graphic was Ole Miss.
And so they get all the plauditudes again, and they can't handle it. They go as a double-digit favorite with everybody picking them, and people, self-included, hand raised, going, hey, I think they're one of 5 teams that have a realistic shot to win the national title. And then they get beat by Florida, who's now 6-5. Everybody was calling him Sunbelt Billy and firing him in September so that they could hire Lane Kiffin. I mean, we're not that far removed from that. There's something to that trend that they cannot. And if you require everyone disrespecting you to win, you're never going to win a championship because most media are front runners. They're going to pile on praise on the teams that win. That's just the way it works. Look at the Detroit Lions right now. You've got to find a different.
That team has leadership.
But well, that's my point. You have to find a way to produce energy and positivity that's internal. It cannot all be external. If the only way you get motivated to go out and do something is to prove the naysayers wrong, well, champ, that ain't gonna last long. Because if you do it for any period of time, there won't be any naysayers. And then what? Mm-hmm. So you get back into culture and chemistry and leadership. And this time, I refuse to blame the players. This is on him.
No, I think Chase kind of hit the nail on the head because we're all kind of talking about the same concept. And I think what it really boils down to is maybe this is the beginning of it, but he's never built a program. He just builds teams. He puts teams together. But
that's
some years
what
it works.
College football is, man. That's
correct. I'm making your point. To me, it's like, why? Like in the end, listen, I think the world of Jackson Dart. He could play quarterback for me, but it's almost like, man, at a certain point, it's like I just don't know. I don't know if that's the guy that is at a certain point, man.
But you know what, Jeffrey?
I don't love him in the fourth quarter, and maybe that's part of it.
But he's a 21-year-old kid. You're asking him to do all these things.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, he's got enough on his table to just be the quarterback. And especially in this world where he's got a private jet deal and he's got all this stuff.
That's what I'm saying. As a young kid,
you need the. This is where you need the coach to be the guy, to be the face, to be the leader, to be the rock. All those things. I think that's part of it. I mean,
and to both those points, Jeffrey, you mentioned this being the outlier year. Kiffin's been pretty good as a favorite. He has. But the other side of it too is none of that. They went 10-2 twice and would have backed into their way probably into 2 playoff berths if it was a 12-team playoff. But there was no real expectations at the time. They didn't really have any weight of the world on their shoulders at the time. They were winning some of these road games to ultimately get to these 10-win seasons. What's now seems to be the case with this expanded playoff. Every time they have some sort of expectation, and it's either Ole Miss takes care of business or pisses down its leg and ruins them, it's now a larger sample size that they just kind of clam up.
No, I mean, to me, like, I don't know if I'd say it's like my fear. I kind of think though, there's in him, there's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of like today just proves him like, I knew you can't do it at Ole Miss. Like, see, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's gonna be his default. And it's like, dude, what do you like? They have given you everything.
I think that went away 14 days ago. I think.
Yeah, does that work when you beat Georgia? Can you really make that argument anymore?
Georgia comes
guys,
in. You have 69.
I agree with all this. I'm
there.
talking about the way he thinks, and I think that.
I guess, but my response to him, if he said that, would be, "Well, I think you're wrong." I mean, because I just saw it. Like I just saw Ole Miss beat the. I mean, and I mean this as a compliment. This is not condescending. Big bad Georgia. Because they're still, to me, big bad Georgia. I mean, they walk out and you're like, whoa, that's Georgia. I mean, they had a brand. They got an identity. Kirby's got a thing. I mean, I'm big bad Georgia. I mean that as a compliment. And you beat them by 18 points at home with 69,000 plus people in the stands. Rowdy, Kirby Smart, a week later, is still talking about the crowd noise that bought Hemingway Stadium. Things that did not happen, that were not on the bingo card that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are all real things. So the whole, can you do it at Ole Miss? Yes. Yes, you can do it.
Not only that, like Ole Miss in this whole new world, Ole Miss is like, it's a good job. I mean, how many rosters are $15 million? Seriously.
I mean,
Ohio State, Georgia.
Andy Staples told me that he thinks Ole Miss has a top 5 to 7 budget on this year's team.
Okay. So
I was about to say 7 max cost $15 million if I had to take a guess.
Okay, but like my point is, I would also say this to Lane. Hey, Lane, buddy, you got some baggage. How many of those jobs would you be getting?
I mean, none.
And they've done, and by the way, they let you be the brand. They let you do, your dog gets to run on the field. Like, it's, everything is all about you, man. How many schools are letting that happen?
I mean,
small list of the ones that are perennial favorites in power.
Right, of the ones that Alabama ain't letting that happen.
I think it's a blank sheet of paper.
You think Ohio State's going to let him pull that?
No.
Ryan Day cut like one promo trying to tell Lou Holtz to suck his dick, and they're like, hey, you can't talk ever again. I mean, literally, Ohio State made – think about this.
I mean, I'll say this: if Alabama if Lane Kiffin were at Alabama and he wanted his pet to be the mascot, he better go buy an elephant and name him Big Al.
Well, I was gonna say, all of a sudden, Juice's name is Crimson.
Yeah.
He better be an elephant.
Correct.
He better grow a big trunk and really eat.
But also, on a serious note, at that point, I know a couple of people that are somewhat connected to Alabama. He's already been there, and every time that comes up, and then it actually happened with Saban retiring last year, it was never a conversation because anyone that's halfway connected to that program is like, no shot he's getting this. Because of what happened when he was there before. It's not like he leaves it better everywhere he leaves.
We had a super chat a minute ago that we didn't recognize. Andre says, Neal, I feel like the last 6 weeks, Billy has done a great job at Florida. Yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
He's been really good since UCF.
They've had they're going to end up beating Florida State, going 7-5 and going into the offseason with some momentum and silencing all the stuff. And he's got a quarterback he can build around for sure.
They didn't quit.
No, they didn't. No, he was very steady.
And you know what? Like, to me, it's like the lesson of all of this is at some point, Ole Miss has to come up with an identity, with a culture, whatever you want to say. Because essentially when your culture is a pro mindset, what the hell does that mean?
Well, like there's some people in the thread and they're dancing around it. They're saying it. And so I want to be clear. Like someone says, name a coach who could have done at Ole Miss what Lane did in the last 5 years. And it's a really short list. I don't know.
I want to be clear. I think there's zero that Ole Miss could have hired. That Ole Miss could have actually hired. I think there are zero.
Yeah, zero.
Correct.
Him. That's
yes,
it.
I think
of
it's
the people
zero.
they could
I think he is the list.
But so I mean, it's. And look, it's going to be the topic of conversation for the next month. I mean, Corey Clark sent me a text. I don't think Corey will mind me saying. He goes, any amount of money you spend going to cover a bowl game is lit on fire. Like I'm not going to the bowl game. I mean, no way. I'm not going to Tampa for a week to follow guys around.
If my dad
was nice in January, Neal.
I was gonna say, if my dad's going in a stream song golf trip with it, I got 2 weeks off from work.
Well, if
so
your dad's willing to pay
I'm not ruling out anything.
If your dad, if Big Jeff is willing to sponsor the trip, that's one thing. But
yeah,
it's not coming out of the McCready Media.
Let me be clear. I will not be attending said bowl game. Yeah. But if there are other perks with said trip, yes, I will.
But my point is I mean, we're not going to be talking about, hey, the build up to the ReliaQuest Bowl or the Tax Slayer Bowl. We're going to be talking about
You don't think
this?
You don't think we're doing a film breakdown of what it's going to be like to play, I don't know, 7-5 Wisconsin?
Well, we'll have to do that because we're contractually obligated.
Yeah,
but
that's different.
That's different. But yeah, but you understand my point. We're going to be talking about this and how do you what lessons do you take from this? Because this was a really good team that they assembled that's going to lose 3 games, and 3 games that it didn't include Georgia. 3 games that didn't include Georgia. That's the weird part, guys. That's the part that I mean, had they lost to South Carolina, LSU, and Georgia, you'd be like, well, it just turns out they just weren't as good as we thought they'd be. They beat Georgia by 18 points. They went to South Carolina and won by 25 points.
Yeah, in the preseason, if I tell you, hey, they're going to beat Oklahoma and Georgia, and they're going to beat a South Carolina team that's a big surprise and go 9-3, they're going to beat them by 25. You've been booking all the tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, the reality is, man, this was a Hugh Freeze season. This was the roller coaster. This was the big highs, the flat.
It does. I mean, it feels like that 14-15 kind of era, that Cotton Bowl era, or that, whatever.
Like beating Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and State in the same season and not winning the West in 2015.
Oh, that's right.
It's very similar to that.
You
say that out loud, it almost seems impossible.
No, it's beating Alabama on the road and losing to Memphis in the same season.
Yeah.
Nuts.
And Florida beat them by 34 in Gainesville, or whatever
Correct.
it was.
They lost to a Kentucky team at home that went 1-7 in the SEC.
Yes.
I'm assuming that there's not going to be a giant comeback in the fourth quarter in Austin.
I mean, listen, I just need them. I need them to play the clock. Like let's keep it. Maybe one more touchdown. Let's just run some clock.
They lose to an LSU team that is kind of mired in internal chaos. And then they go to Florida and they lose to a team that was just playing with some house money. It's a lot there. There's a lot to digest. And they blew out everybody else. So when there was no pressure, they were awesome. And when there was pressure, they were awful. And there's something to that.
I can't explain the Georgia game, though, because I think they were under pressure against Georgia.
They were. That's the crazy part, right? Someone goes, well, maybe the Georgia game was an aberration. It's like I don't think so. I mean,
so maybe the answer is
Georgia loses next week to Georgia Tech, and we go, oh, turns out they suck. I don't know.
I mean, in fairness, UMass put up points today. Did y'all see this? UMass, I think, put up nearly 30.
I'm not holding that against them. That's a
I know, but what I'm saying is Georgia may not be the – I think we can safely say at this point, Georgia is not peak of its powers Georgia. It's still very, very good.
Yeah.
But I think what it really boils down to is – and this kind of goes to Brian's whole point. It's not a serious operation. But Georgia, they take seriously. And, that's kind of the thing that's funny is, how the hell can you not take Florida seriously? I'm at a certain point, I'm willing to sit there and go, all right, the Kentucky game
they did take it seriously. They called it a playoff game. So that's the crazy part. I'm not disagreeing with you or Brian, but because you're obviously both kind of right, but in terms of the things they said and the way they approached it, where everyone talked about, hey, this is a playoff game. It's been a playoff game since we lost to LSU. We treated Oklahoma like a playoff game. Even though the first half of the Oklahoma game they sucked and something clearly happened at halftime. Yeah. I've heard too many things. Something happened at halftime that galvanized them. And then they come back they play a great second half against Oklahoma. They go to Fayetteville and play an Arkansas team that's fine. But in fairness to them, Arkansas hasn't getting blown out by anybody else. Nobody else has beaten Arkansas by 40 freaking points. They're not good, but nobody else just kills them. Arkansas stayed on the field with, with Texas and with other teams. I mean, they're not shitty. Ole Miss beat the hell out of Arkansas, and then they turn around a week later and basically beat the hell out of Georgia. And they tell you that this week's going to be a playoff game, and then this happens. It's weird. I can't figure it out. Is my point. Like, I get what Brian says. I was getting ready to ask him, elaborate when you say it's an unserious program. And I don't mean this, I'm not challenging you. I'm asking you to, because I got to write about this for the next week. When you say that, what do you mean?
Like, I don't even necessarily mean, like, I like the way Jeffrey described it. It's like saying two different versions of the same thing. I don't mean it's like an unserious program from top to bottom. I have a hard time taking this coaching staff seriously when the best version of them goes and beats Georgia and kicks their ass to the point where it completely changes the narrative about what people think of you locally and nationally and seem like a turning point for the program. And then you turn around and lose a third game to an inferior team that followed a very similar script as the other two when you had everything to play for. That's why I have a hard time taking the coaching staff seriously. If you're pro mindset, and he talks about, to Neal's point earlier, when he talks so much about Nick Saban and all these other things. He doesn't behave like Nick Saban and the other ones. He does it like when it's awesome and everything's going well, but like he doesn't really handle his business when Ole Miss is the favorite and it's kind of a pitfall where it's, okay, you need to go take care of this and you've secured a playoff ticket. They clam up. And like Jeffrey mentioned, like not taking them seriously. I don't even like, I know what Jeffrey was describing. It's almost like they take it too seriously and they tighten up. Like the old Ferris Bueller line. If you stuck a lump of coal up his ass, you'd have a diamond in 2 weeks. Lane Kiffin probably would have shit a diamond today. He coached the game that way. So they almost coach completely differently in games like that. He used to do it against Saban, against Alabama. And so when you have that kind of like volatility, I just don't really buy into the pro mindset, and I find it to be unserious. I don't think they're an unserious program. I think this version of the staff and the way they handled this year, it's hard to take that seriously. I think that was an abject failure.
That's more
I think
than
the problem with calling it the whole pro mindset. You know what
What
doesn't
does that
happen?
mean?
Well, first off, yeah, it's just like, what the hell? Like, that's clearly like a marketing tagline. But you know what pro teams don't do? Pro teams are not this inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not. Like, yeah, they lose
It's the
games.
antithesis of what you're actually doing.
Correct. Like, they have games where, like, they have their best game of the year or their worst game of the year. But they don't have these, what the hell happened?
Yeah. Or if you do, it's easily explainable. It's like, well,
right. Their quarterback got hurt. They were missing 5 offensive linemen, or there's
17 days and
correct.
Both tackles were out. The quarterback was hurt. Wide receiver didn't play. Top corner was out.
Or you have a bad day, but you don't have 3 of them.
Yeah. That's great, Brian. That's exactly right.
Well, and like, or
the problem
situation
is not that Kentucky happened. The problem is that Kentucky and Florida happened. Again,
and honestly, I think at this point we can say LSU.
They've played 7 SEC games, and this has happened in 3 of them. That's again. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing my ULM math here, and I realize it's not quite half. And at ULM, someone would go, well, you know what? Call it half. It's fine. Take your degree and leave. But it's 3 out of 7.
I think the other problem is, if you tell me, all right, they lost to Kentucky, they lost to LSU, and they lost to Florida this year, I would have been like, man, I bet they had great days.
Oh, Minnesota.
None of them really have. It wasn't like they had out-of-body experiences. Like, Nussmeier made a couple of plays. Like,
but here's the crazy part. Like, right, they show up in Fayetteville. If you think about it, all they had done when they got to Fayetteville was beaten Oklahoma. Like them and everybody else. They show up in Fayetteville like a house of fire. I hear all these people going, I'm not making fun of anybody in case you get your feelings hurt. I don't mean to, but like, this is like this house of horrors. It's like, it's like a cleansing to win in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Seriously? I mean, that's not exactly a world-renowned program here. They're not going to back-to-back Cotton Bowls in Fayetteville. They come out like they're on fire there. And they win 63 to whatever it was, 31, I think, 30 something. I don't know.
I'm totally like, I know this. And then, literally, yeah.
But my point is that they show up there like completely on task. Hell, they showed up in Winston-Salem just locked in because Wake Forest had the audacity to back out of next year's game. I mean, think about this for a minute. They go to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where nobody cares. I mean, nobody cares. It's the most laid back. I thoroughly enjoyed my 48 hours there, but like nobody was worked up about that game. And Ole Miss walks in like, God, this is a freaking, we're here to take names. We're kick ass, take names. How dare you back out of next year's game and exercise a clause in a legally written contract, you bastards. And then they show up today with everything on the line, and it's like they're just not ready. It's mind-boggling. It really is. It just I'm at a loss.
And then you can't fix it when you go up 14-7. And you go up and get all the momentum, and you're probably one score away from it being night, and over, and then you just do the same damn thing again.
Because they have
Yes, I thought at 14-7 we were about to have a Fayetteville situation.
Yeah.
I was like, they're about to take over this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I 100% thought that. That was what made the next drive so shocking and the way the rest of it played out.
Yeah, because like that day in Arkansas's like in Winston-Salem, the same thing. Arkansas was like, we're not supposed to win. You guys want to win that bad? Okay, here, go win. And then,
but maybe that's the point. Like, do they have to invent? Like, are like if they really wanted to follow The Last Dance, maybe they should have did what Jordan did: invent some type of villain every single week. Like, I don't know. Like,
so hard to do, though, right? That's so hard to do. So you've got to go back to, it's like Brian. You've got to go back to culture, and you've got to go back to this is just who we are. And they couldn't do that. I mean, Florida had just beaten LSU. They get Florida State next week. In this era of college football, the difference between 6 and 7 wins is completely zero. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter.
Guys, they did 14 things wrong today in different facets. They played poorly in every phase except defense, like there in the second half. However, Siski's not with us right now. I'll give him credit. At the very beginning of the year, it was, hey, to make the playoff, it's going to come down to a couple times late in the year when they have to get a few yards running the football, and do they do it or do they don't? And they didn't.
It's more than fair. And so you go back to the whole Judkins decision from last January.
Micah Davis out in one-on-ones is not going to win many battles in the SEC. And he lost all of them.
No,
today.
and frankly, neither is Ulysses Bentley for all the people that are clamoring for him.
They didn't have that guy. Frankly, Dominic Thomas had 2 really good runs on that second to last drive.
He did.
And in fairness on the Judkins thing, that did not sound like a reconcilable situation. Like, we can crush them on the pro mindset and culture doesn't mean anything, but the fact that they're like, hey man, keep it moving down the road. I can't totally
your problem
fault them
there.
It's what they did or didn't do to address that and replace him is what.
That's my point. It's not recognizing it early enough where you can fix it.
You know what it was, Chase? You know what it was, Chase? It was, we want to win this damn Peach Bowl so bad that we'll do and say what we have to say to get him to play in this game, where if they had just let him hit the bricks, now maybe they wouldn't have won the Peach Bowl, but they would have Etienne on their roster right now.
They would, yeah. You're right.
And so it's an inability to ever swallow a little ego. I mean, like last year, you would have had to go with Bentley, and I don't even know who else at running back if Quinshawn doesn't show. You would have had part of the storyline would have been Quinshawn's not coming back. He took his ball and went home. He's in the portal. The Peach Bowl would have lost a little bit of the juice. And they wanted all that juice. They did. They wanted that to feel like this big thing so that they could go into the transfer portal and be the portal king. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And in the end, what did the Peach Bowl really matter? It didn't. It was a meaningless game. I mean, it didn't matter.
Did Penn State look like they cared?
Well, I mean, I know they didn't. I watched their big first-round all-pro, first-round NFL draft pick tackle warm up and not play. I mean, it just, Chop Robinson didn't play. I'm not trying to take away from that win. I'm just saying, but part of it was there was this sense that we must have this perception of all this momentum. And they did, and it worked, and they landed all these guys in the portal, and then Quinshawn left, and they didn't really have anyone to replace him. We did the Logan Diggs song and dance this week. Like, I don't know what that was about Monday. He's practiced more than ever before. Okay, is he playing or not?
questionable to out, just like anything else. How many conversations have we had about the injury report this year? That's the thing, though. Constant mind games, the trolling. But to your point, the Peach Bowl was a PR trampoline for this team this coming year. And so now you can look back and it's like, well, that was a failure. That didn't really matter. But that's kind of the Pete Kiffin moment. A game against a major opponent that doesn't have any real stakes. Hell yeah, I'd take Kiffin 10 times out of 10. But you put some actual stakes on it, not so much.
Yeah. And that all adds up to 8-3 with a game that will be fascinating on Friday to see what this thing even looks like.
What do you do about that, by the way? Where do you go from here? I mean, they'll sleepwalk probably to a win over Mississippi State, but what do you do about the next?
There's no way for us to answer that question without seeing what this team is or isn't on Monday. I mean, it's where Lane's probably right. There's just no way to even gauge that on Saturday to know any idea of where they are sitting or not sitting for that game.
But to Neal's point, Lane's the only one we talked to other than some players. And so based on what he sounded like today, you really think he's just going to rally the troops?
No.
I mean,
if they beat Mississippi State, it's going to be simple. Let me rephrase. They'll beat Mississippi State. When they do, it's going to just be because they have more better players. But like if I'm in fairness, if I'm just thinking out loud, if I'm these people, if I'm Walter Nolan, and I hurt my hand today, and I got my hand wrapped to play, hey, I'm out on this Egg Bowl thing. I'm not getting hurt against Mississippi State. The draft is coming up.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, if I'm Princely Umanmielen and I just got my playoff hopes dashed by my former team who laughed in my face, am I taking out my frustrations on Mississippi State? I mean,
and that's been going on for 5 years. I mean, Yeboah and Elijah Moore sat out 2 games in 20.
In fairness, most teams in the SEC this year, like, they haven't really treated Mississippi State like a real game. Like, everybody's just kind of viewed it as like, all right, like, get in and out.
This is going to be their Super Bowl.
That's right. To your point, they've been a cover machine by 3+ scores because it's easy to play a game on tilt when nobody takes you seriously. But like,
even for Mississippi State, like I heard Aaliyah say this a minute ago, but this is going to be their Super Bowl. No, it was going to be their Super Bowl.
Right.
Had they had the opportunity to knock Ole Miss out of the playoff, they could have at least talked themselves into this. Let's go be, David and knock off Goliath. Now it's like we're not knocking them out of anything. We're knocking them out of the Tax Slayer Bowl and into the Music City. I mean, who gives a shit?
Ooh.
I mean,
yeah.
But you also there's
Hey
other
boys,
teams
I think there could be a Memphis trip
that were disappointing.
They'll be ahead
But
of
you
that.
can't do this culture crap and then punt on this game.
Arkansas is earning the Memphis trip right now against Louisiana Tech.
What's that score?
28-7 Arkansas. But
No.
14 minutes to go.
Do they have the ball?
They just sacked Louisiana Tech. It's late. It's 3rd and long. I don't know.
I'm just saying, do we have a chance to get to Covertown? No, do we have a chance to get to Covertown? I do care.
Yeah, they're a field goal, a score away from Covertown.
Okay.
All right, Chase. I know you probably need to go. You got to go get your dinner. It's
I got to eat something. Yeah,
6:41.
it's 7
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes from bedtime, right?
I'm tired. Yeah, it's close. I don't know if I'm tired or I'm anticipating being tired. I think I'm gonna set a wake up call at 4 a.m.
Well, I got to get up in the morning and write 10 weekend thoughts, and I got nothing. I mean, I'm just gonna be.
I'll trade you.
No, I can't run 26 miles tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm untrained.
My cold is like 80% better. It's like still there a little bit. I'm kind of sniffling, but
I saved your ass on Wednesday morning.
It was going to be much worse.
For those that don't know, that weren't out here watching, we had some groupies out as usual. I made him stop, and he rolled down his window. I went, go get a shot in a Z-Pack now.
Yeah.
And had he not done it,
it was starting to get bad.
He'd be in trouble now.
It would have been in my chest, and I'd have been in a lot of trouble. Like, I would have been worried about finishing. Now I know I'm not 100%, but I'm going to finish. So it'll be fine.
Just me saving the day, as
4 a.m.
always. That's my nickname, Neal Save the Day McCready.
It's prime rib night, boys.
Ooh.
We're doing cauliflower crust pizzas here.
Gross. On Saturday?
Yeah, we're just gonna drink some bourbon, man. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Does that pair nicely with cauliflower crust?
I don't know. It's just pizza. It'll be all right. What you got tonight, Brian? What are you eating?
I think my wife might have picked up rice and spice, which we eat like once a week. I'm kind of like a Thai food fanatic. Don't really know why. Big spice guy in that sense. I've talked to Chase about that before. I'm not a big like spicy wings guy, not a big hot food guy in general, but for whatever reason, I have a gigantic glutton for punishment on Thai food. So I'm like, just spice that shit up.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think
right.
we have that going on.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, we will wrap it up there. Again, the final by now, you know it. Florida beats Ole Miss 24-17. Ole Miss falls to 8-3 out of the college football playoff discussion. We will have a week of very boring podcast ahead with Ole Miss getting ready to play
Feast week, baby.
Yeah, woo! Ole Miss and Mississippi State on Friday. I mean, guys, I lined up a really good show for this week's MPW Digital Extra. Can I tell you guys about my morning? I mean, Ryan Brown's coming back. Hadn't talked to Ryan.
I hope you learned your don't ever prepare.
Yeah. Taylor McGregor, ESPN, the dugout reporter for the Chicago Cubs. I texted back and forth with Taylor this morning. She's coming on this week. I mean, I had a lot ready. I was super excited. I was like, this is going to be a big week of programming, and then you know the rest.
That's over now.
We were 4 quarters away from like 6 weeks of awesome content, and it just got absolutely dumped on in 3 hours.
We were gonna have the easiest 3 weeks of December ever, like previewing a playoff game that, hell, maybe in Oxford, that Ole Miss, if they won, might go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, if I told you 5 years ago, hey fellas, Ole Miss is going to the Rose Bowl, you'd have been like, what? I mean, that's where we were headed, and all that's gone. I didn't do any of it. None of it's my fault. I mean, my emotional attachment today was to an Oxford-Brandon game, so leave me alone.
Literally, all they had to do was just win 1 of 3 games as a favorite, 2 of which they were double-digit favorites. That's all they had to do.
Yeah, I mean, I should be more pissed than I am, but it is what it is. I mean, I'm.
Well, I mean, it's like there's only so much emotion you can have. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, I spent the week going, they're going to win big, and I was convinced they were going to win big.
I bet on them.
I'm pissed selfishly. After I talk to Weldon tomorrow, like, I don't know how I'm going to fill out a podcast schedule. What the hell does this shit even matter for anymore? I have no clue what I'm going to do for the next month. I can't do hoops.
I think no, you can't because they're not very good. They're not. I'm gonna do the stupid thing right now and say it out loud. I've watched them 4 times in person, and they're not very good.
No, and they even if they were okay, you can't do that. I mean, this is not a fan base where you can do that for a month and a half. Like it's just
no. It's a challenge. I mean, I think the answer is we try to figure out why it happened. You try to figure out why it happened, and you go from there. All right, we will.
Like that's the other thing. I kept thinking, like, are they over? Whatever. I was like, are they overrated? But it's like, I don't know. They've shown at times they can be one of the best teams.
No, they're not overrated because they killed that. They killed that when they beat Georgia. Had they lost to Georgia, we'd be able to go. It turns out they just weren't very good. Like I did write, they're not good enough because clearly they're not. But it's deeper than that. And so now I've got to dive into how much deeper is it? Like I've got to almost become a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and that's not what I'm qualified to do. All right, we will wrap it there. Our boy Parham's got to run 26.2 miles in the morning. Like I don't know who's coughing. I don't know if that's someone in Jeffrey's house or someone at Chase's.
No, that was Chase. I think that was Chase.
No, wasn't me.
Wasn't Chase. I don't know who's coughing. Okay.
Good luck, Chase. Rip you a cig before the start.
Oh yeah, that's the plan. I mean, we're just gonna try to get through it. So we're
Little cowboy killer.
Don't forget, go to go to Realtree.com, promo code MPW15 for 15% off your order. Be a great Christmas gift as the Christmas gifting season begins. So for Jeffrey Wright, for Chase Parham, for Brian Rippee, I'm Neal McCready. That does it for this edition of MPW Digital Postgame. We will talk to you again on Monday.